Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
You are listening to the Flagship Podcast with your hosts, Joe Lanza.
Hey, star-making performance.
She's not wrong.
The show's doing .11s. Nobody watches the show. Less people watch the show now than were watching it before her star-making performance.
And Rich Craich.
I believe you're indifferent on apples. That's what a great fruit that you're just letting go by the wayside.
What is your fascination with apples?
They're fantastic. It's the fall. It's the apple season, man.
And we are live on the Flagship Podcast. I am Rich, back from vacation. He is Joe. Here as always. What's going on? How are you, Joe?
You sound real energetic.
Really? Yeah, 2 weeks off this thing. You should try it sometimes. It's nice. Well, not 2 weeks off, I guess. 1 week off. I guess we did the early show. We did the Tuesday show before I left. And then I had, so it felt like 2 weeks off. It felt like 2 weeks off. But I guess it was just 1 week off. Hey, you know what? 1 week off does the body good sometimes here on the Flagship. So.
I don't know, you're all peppy. Sound like you just either ripped a line or got some action, or you're very energetic. You notice that's the two different personalities. You chalk it up to a week off, nice and refreshed. I'm like, you must have had some sex or did coke.
Right. I didn't have to. I had a week where I didn't have to watch wrestling wall to wall every free moment of my time, and I didn't have to go on here and have and have takes on it all and be all ready. That is refreshing to me. Your idea of being refreshed is I did a line of coke or I just banged the nurse. That's the only two options that would cause me to be happy or excitable at any point.
That's what came to mind. I don't know. It's how you sounded.
It's fair.
You know?
So I have a hypothetical for you, Joe, as we get to the banter portion of this year's show before we get into the meat and potatoes of the professional wrestling, of which we have a lot. We have the AEW rumored TV deal.
This year's show, you're really planning on taking a lot of time off.
Did I say this year's show? It's been a while. Yeah, I'm telling you. Well, fuck it. Yeah, let's just. Yeah, you know what? I'll come back next year. It's annoying.
One show a year?
I think so. That's not bad, right? That you'd bring how much A game, or would you? Do you think you would bring an A game, or would you be so off your? You know, like you're seeing here, I'm a disaster already. It's because I took that week off. But I wonder if you took a whole year off, would you just be like, let's go? Or you'd have a great episode, or you think you'd have a shitty episode because you'd have to get back in the flow of things? And
well, would we have to talk about the entire year? That's,
that's true. Yeah. If I said, all right, Joe, let's talk about the year 2024. Yeah, that'd be tough. That'd be tough to kind of wrap up.
And then you're like, and to lead things off, January, right? And then just go.
Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
That'd be bad audio. That'd be bad audio for sure. With us, it would probably take, an ungodly amount of time. But anyway, sorry. This week, we have AEW rumored TV deal. Janelle Grant, her lawyers had a press conference. We'll talk a little bit about that. CMLL had their anniversary show. We will review that. Of course, this is an MLW podcast, so we are covering the latest MLW YouTube special, Fightland, as well as upcoming MLW specials, Pit Fighters and Slaughterhouse. We have almost full cards for Pit Fighters and Slaughterhouse. I know you're excited about both of those. Pro Wrestling Noah, some happenings in there, and a few other things in the wrestling world as well. So we are going to get to all of that, but I have a hypothetical for you, Joe, first, because by the time that we do this show next week, it's possible that sports history occurs and I am there live for that sports history. So as you are well aware, and hopefully most people are well aware, the Chicago White Sox, my favorite baseball team for some reason, historically horrible this year. On the precipice of setting the record for the most losses in Major League Baseball history. Now they're not going to match the Cleveland Spiders or whatever, but that's like 18, 80, whatever the hell. We're not counting those. We're counting the Mets. The classic expansion Mets. That's the one that everybody points to. That is the one. 120 losses for those Mets. That is the benchmark that the White Sox are on the doorstep of. Now, if they get swept this weekend in San Diego, which is very likely given the fact that they only have 30-something wins, not unlikely that they get swept by a pretty decent baseball team. But if they get swept by the San Diego Padres, I believe it works out that Tuesday's game with the White Sox, I believe, let me see who they are against in that game, but I have tickets to that game on Tuesday. Now, it just kind of happenstance that I had tickets to this game, but I have tickets. Angels, it'd be against the Angels here on Tuesday. That would be the game, if they get swept this weekend, that would be the game where they set the record for the most losses in Major League Baseball history. Now, you are an ardent, don't ever root for your team to lose guy, right? Just to make sure I have you correct. Like, you think people that root for tanking teams and root for their team to lose or whatever are losers, correct?
It's loser behavior. Yeah.
Okay. In this
I also
case,
question it's loser behavior, and I question your true passion for the team if you root for tanking. I mean, it's just loser behavior.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't totally disagree. I've found myself in that place certain times, but I would certainly agree that'd be loser behavior, to root for a tanking team.
Just say I'm not a super hardcore passionate fan that loves the team. That's okay. You don't have to be that.
Right.
Because if you're that, you can't root for losing. Because I can't wrap my brain around it. So, like, you could be a fan of the team and maybe think, all right, well, maybe we're better off if we, but to actively root for flat out tanking. Yes, I want my NFL team to go 3-14 because I want to draft some geek quarterback who might change the fortunes of the franchise
and who might suck.
That's loser behavior. It's just loser behavior. But that's my stance on tanking. But that's not really where you're going here.
No. And there, I think there's an aspect of, I would like my team to maybe do a rebuild, in the sense that, like, not necessarily I want them to tank, but there was times in my White Sox fandom where I was like, you know what, this team tries every single year, and all they do, we're stuck at like 75 wins and 80 wins or whatever. It'd be pretty good if they just kind of broke it down and built it up, build up the farm system the best way you can, trade a lot of the top guys, get young talent, and start working towards a direction of getting good again. And I was actively rooting for that for a couple years, and then it did happen, and the White Sox got quote unquote good for a little bit, a very small window. Now, where would you put that on a loser behavior of No,
that's not loser behavior. Sometimes you need a rebuild.
Like a big picture. But you're thinking big picture. You were still rooting for your team to eventually, but you're saying we need to have a couple of down years till we can have the good times again.
Well, yeah, but you're not rooting for the down years. You're rooting for a rebuild. What you're saying is, all right, we had a window. It either worked out or it didn't work out, but this current group has to go. So it's okay to be into a rebuild or to hope your team rebuilds. But I think it's loser behavior if the team, let's say, is shockingly mediocre during the rebuild and you're like, fuck, we should be losing. Like that's loser behavior. If you start winning but faster than you should root for the winning. rather than see. I don't like when people are like, oh, well, what's the point of making the playoffs and then losing in the first round? I'd rather just pick first in the draft. That's the kind of loser behavior I'm talking about. You're not a passionate fan of the team. You know, it's like, of course, anyone who wants to have fun with sports, you'd rather sneak into the playoffs, have some fun for 6 months, even if it means getting knocked out, rather than rooting for, for rooting for draft picks. I mean, this life is too short to sit around rooting for draft picks.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so then that leads me to my scenario where I am going to Tuesday's White Sox game. Now, Tuesday's White Sox game could be the game, if they get swept this weekend, that would set the record for the most losses in baseball history, right? Am I a loser if I root for that to occur? It's tough because they're 36 and 117, so it's already bad. You know what I mean? It's already
putting myself in your shoes. What you're weighing here is, do you want to be able to say you were there for history? Funny, quirky history, something to tell someone when you meet them or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Or do you want your franchise to avoid that kind of embarrassment? The argument would be they've already embarrassed themselves.
Correct. I would agree, yes.
Ultimately, if I were in your situation, I would not root for them to lose because I wouldn't want to be known. I wouldn't want my team known as the worst team of all time. Because no matter how bad it's gotten for the White Sox this year, and it's been embarrassingly bad because I've been locked in at different points, I would still, when it gets brought up on TV or it gets brought up anecdotally, I'd still rather people bring up the Mets than my team.
Okay.
So my stance would be, I personally would root for them to win the game, but I also can't kill you if you want to see the history and just enjoy it for the absurdity of it. I don't think that's loser behavior. No.
Okay. All right, good. That's kind of where I'm at because it would be, it would suck and it would pain me that like the 62 Mets, which is as long as I have lived, if you're a baseball fan and someone says the 62 Mets, you know exactly what that means. You know what I mean? You're like, oh yeah, that team, fuck, one of the worst teams ever, the worst team ever, 120 losses. Like, if you knew anything about baseball, you know the 62 Mets. That's all you have to say. If someone, in a baseball conversation would just say, 62 Mets, you go, oh yeah, you didn't need any more context. You knew what it was. That could potentially get replaced by the 24 White Sox. And that's tough. That is tough to kind of swallow that is a real possibility. But I feel like I'm going to root for them to lose. And I just feel like being a part of that history and being like, you know what? If you're going to fucking suck the best that anyone's ever sucked. Because, like, what a gut punch would it be to be, like, 37, have, like, 100, tie. Imagine if they tied the 62 Mets. That's not very fun. Imagine if they were one game less or one game better or whatever you want to say than the 62 Mets. Like, that would also kind of stink if you had 100. It's still 119 losses. You know what I mean? There's not really all that. You're not going to hang your head on, well, at least we have only 119 losses. Like, it's bad. It's already been bad. There's a magnifying glass on my organization, which I've been wanting for a while, and my owner, which I've been wanting a while, so that the national media realizes, oh my God, it's really bad out there for these Chicago White Sox fans. So that's nice to see. But I think I'm going to root for the history. And this could all be null and void if, of course, they win one of the games this weekend against San Diego. Now, with that said, I'm going to maybe try to buy tickets for Wednesday, too, because I very much want to be a part of that history. I like being a part of sports history. I went to the Mark Burley perfect game. Always remember that. I once saw somebody hit, I think it was Josh Willingham. Remember Josh Willingham? I think he was a national at that time. I saw him hit 2 grand slams in a single game against the Brewers. And that was always fun. And that gets brought up occasionally of guys who hit 2 grand slams in a game. And it's a very small list. So being able to say, I was there. I was there when the White Sox lost their 121st game. I think I want to root for it, or I'm just going to be neutral and just show up to the game. Like, I don't think I'm going to be standing up and like hooting and hollering if like the Angels do something, but I think it'd be like, hey, you know what? If they're going to lose, which they've done several times this year, I'd like to be here for this and see it and remember that I was there in the audience when they set the record. I think that's where I'm at. I'm not going to be like standing up and like, I'm trying to think of it. Who's even a current Angel? The Angels are not very good either. So I'm really struggling on who a current member of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who the hell's even on that team?
You got low effort Anthony Rendon.
Right, all the guy that willingly the bragging about his low effort. Yeah, my God, I can't root for that guy. No, I can't root for that. That's.
Well, see, I've fallen on the side that it's not loser behavior. You're doing it for the meme. See, the 62 Mets are almost lovable to their fan base, though.
Yeah,
it was the first year of the franchise. They weren't expected to be good anyway. There were characters. They had marvelous Marv Throneberry. They had Choo Choo Coleman. They had Roger Craig lost 24 games. They had Gil Hodges at the end of the line, who played for the Brooklyn Dodgers a generation or 10 years earlier or whatever. So they were almost they've become lovable in Mets lore. Like the Met fans aren't necessarily embarrassed of that team, right? I think a lot of Met fans will be rooting for the White Sox. I think some Met fans probably want that Met team to carry that and to continue to be remembered for that. Whereas this White Sox team, there's nothing lovable about them.
No, like nothing.
It's just they're loathsome to a White Sox fan. They're just they're a loathsome team. They're a loathsome organization. There's nothing adorable about this losing. They're not like some young, ridiculously young team where there's some light at the end of the tunnel. There's
right. Nobody that's on this team. The next time they're good, not a single maybe Luis Robert, but probably not even him will be back. Like that's the thing. It's not even like you'd be like, oh yeah, it's like all these 20-year-olds or whatever. But you know what? When we're good, these guys are all going to look back on this. None of these people will be back here. None of these people will be on this team when we're good again. Jonathan Cannon or whatever. None of these guys are going to be on this team.
It's not a likable or lovable team. So it's not going to have that same charm that maybe the 62 Mets, have ended up, developing over the decades. So yeah, I don't know. I vote not loser behavior. You go ahead and root for that loss.
Cool. I'm gonna do that. I think. I think less of like the full on rooting and more just like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna be here, and if it happens, I'm not gonna be upset. Like I'm curious how the White Sox fans react to this as well. Is there gonna be like cheers or I don't know, because it's weird. I was one time I was in the crowd when Frank Thomas made his return to Chicago after being let go by the White Sox, and he was with the Athletics, and he hit a home run in his first at bat back in Chicago, and the crowd cheered him because it was just like, it's fucking Big Frank, man. And people kind of sided with him too. People didn't really love the way that he kind of left the organization and kind of blamed them or whatever. So that was a fun, surreal thing where he hit a home run, the crowd kind of cheered, and then it was cool too because then he hit a home run his next at bat, and then everybody booed. And everybody was like, all right, we gave you the one. That was cool, but now fuck you. Fuck you again. Now you're on the other team. Like, we give you the one little moment just to say, like, hey, Big Frank, we appreciate all you did, but now screw you, because then he hit another dinger later in the night, too, to make us really pay. But, okay, that I just wanted to make sure, because you're the foremost, I think the foremost expert on or the foremost opinion on railing against people rooting against their team and hoping that they lose and getting draft picks and all that sort of stuff. You're very anti that. So I was very curious on this because I was like, oh man, I feel a little conflicted about this. Like I will say I bet the under on the White Sox win total. I think we talked about this early in the year, and it was like 62 or something like that. Do you remember that rate? I remember I maybe texted you or something like that, and I was like, I think I'm gonna take this. Like, this seems pretty ridiculous, right? And you're like, yeah, that seems like a good deal. I'm like, 62, I don't think they get to 60 wins. I don't think they get to 55 wins. I did not expect them to be struggling mightily to get to 40 wins. So I already won that bet, and I already kind of felt bad about doing that bet. Now I was also saying, do I feel bad about rooting for them to set the record? But if I'm going to be there live, might as well see some history. So.
Well, think about the draft pick. Joe.
Well, I don't know if you know anything about Major League Baseball rules or the fact that the Chicago White Sox play in the city of Chicago. That is considered by Major League Baseball to be a big market. Chicago, have you heard of it? Relatively large city here in the Midwest. They can only draft number 10 is the lowest. That they
are you sure about that? Because someone said that in our chat, and I don't think that's for the overall first pick. I think that's for the. Are you sure?
I'm sure.
I got to look that up.
Trust me.
Are they talking about that locally?
Oh yeah. Look it up. The highest the White Sox can pick in the draft. Yeah.
Here we go. For the new collective bargaining agreement, general draft order in the first round will be based on lottery participated by 18 teams, which did not make the postseason in the past season, to determine the first 6 picks in the draft, with the 3 worst clubs having an equal chance of winning the top overall pick, and secondly, by the finishes of the playoff. That's let's see. In each subsequent round, first each.
It's the most Francesa you've been in quite some time.
Also, See, this doesn't say that.
Oh, I'll tell you here. Okay, here it is. If you look up the
You
highest
have
the
it?
White Sox
Read it
can
to
draft.
me.
Yep. Yahoo Sports here. White Sox face historically bleak present and long road back. Instead, so basically the highest the White Sox can draft in 2025, regardless of the record this season, is 10th. New rules dictate that a team that is not part of MLB's revenue sharing cannot pick in the lottery in back-to-back years, and the White Sox picked 5th in 2024 using the selection on Arkansas pitcher Hagen Smith. So
there it is. Revenue sharing recipient teams are limited to receiving lottery picks in 2 consecutive drafts.
Yep.
And non-recipients can get one of the top 6 selections in a single draft year only. All right, so because they've been bad so many years in a row, they cannot get the first. They have to pick 11th or lower.
They
or higher.
10th is the best they can do. But essentially, they can pick 10th, which they will because they have the worst record in the league. So that's where they'll be. And it's cool because they're in the revenue sharing, or they're not in the revenue sharing. And even though our owner probably wishes they were, and cries poor and all that sort of stuff, that the best we can do in this quote unquote tanking season is pick 10th. So, yep, go White Sox. It's quite the thing over here. Quite the thing over here. So you know what? When it's all this bad, why not set history? That's my point. When it's this bad, you might as well set some goddamn history. But there you go. So that's White Sox. I'm glad you helped me with that. Help me work through that. I guess we can get to the wrestling. Do you have Iceland takes? Because people thought that I blew through the rundown so that you wouldn't rail on me about Iceland. But you railed on me for like 25 minutes. Last week's Flagship.
I already did that.
Yeah,
I'm not doing that again.
You can't do it to my face. It's a lot better to do it when I'm not there, when I'm halfway across the country and I can't fight back.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, well, I already did that last week. And as people know, we never belabor and repeat points. So
no.
I will not be doing that again. No.
I didn't think so. But I did want to really quickly say thank you to everybody who filled in for me last week. Obviously, Cubs fan and Case Low on the Flagship, and then Ibu on the Instant Reaction Live, which has gotten, or Instant Reaction Not Live for AEW All Out, which has gotten rave reviews, and that was a tremendous show. I really, really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the Flagship a lot last week as well. So thank you to Case, Cubs fan, and Ibu. That's a great triple threat of people to come in and fill in for me. So glad they were able to do that.
What about thanks to me? I produced them all.
Oh, yeah. You got to do it. Well, you got to do it. I'm thinking those guys because they had to step up.
I got to do it, but I'm the mastermind. I had to produce this content, put it together, plan it out, coax these people to come on. You know, jeez. Everyone else gets thanked but me. Unbelievable.
Thank you, Joe. I guess that didn't feel right. I take that back. I can't even thank you.
Never felt more disrespect.
But no, it was good shows. Good shows last week for sure. Instant Reaction and the Flagship. But anything else, or do you want to jump right into this professional wrestling?
I guess. I mean, it's always kind of a bummer when we switch over to actually doing the wrestling.
I know.
But I mean, I guess that's why people are here. So you think we can keep this one under 3 hours? You think that's possible? I don't think it's possible. There's a lot on the table.
I think we got it.
We just burned 30 minutes.
We did, but I think it was yeah, you're right. No, yeah. That's going to be tough, but
There's
I
not
think
a fucking chance. There's not a fucking chance.
If there's a will, there's a way, but I don't know how much will there is, so we'll see what ends up happening here. But all right, let's start off here with the rumors of AEW's TV deal. And I know you talked about this a little bit on the Thursday Dynamite review, available right now over there at flagshippatreon.com. I did not listen to that yet, so I do not know your thoughts on these TV deal rumors, but let me just run it down here real quick for anybody who does not know, and then we'll kind of analyze it and give our thoughts. So in his newsletter, writes for Puck, which, by the way, I don't know, do you listen or consume any of the Puck media stuff? I've recently started, and they do a really good job over there.
I listen to the podcast from time to time.
The Town? You listen to The Town? Yeah, that one's good.
Baloney?
Yeah. Is it Baloney? I thought it was something else, but
I don't know.
Bellany? I think it's Bellany, but I like Baloney's better. I think they call him Baloney. That probably works anyway better. But yeah, the Puck.
Bellany.
I don't know.
Matt Baloney. It's The Town.
The Town. Yeah, The Town. Like, and then Puck / The Town. But
it's like a 25-minute podcast. How do you even? I don't understand.
I know. I listen to it sometimes, and he's like, all right, here we go. And I'm like talking to this guy about, like, you know, the Emmys, and I'm like, well, this should be a while. And they're like, all right, well, that was great. I'm like, this is 22 minutes. Like, how'd you talk about the Emmys? How'd you wrap up like what's going on? Like, all right, we got to talk about the ongoing negotiations between WBD and carriage fees. And I'm like, oh, this should be a long one. And it's like 21 minutes. And he's like, all right, thanks, man. I'm like, what? Like, why even show up?
They're just rushing through their spots. Like, we're like Greg Valentine. It takes us 15 minutes to get warmed up.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
That's like half the podcast over there. I don't understand how they do it.
Like, they'd be done right now. They'd be wrapping this thing up here, and they do it
over.
But they get a lot in. Like, it's a very voluminous podcast, and they do a little bit of banter, but it's just over. It's just quickly over, and you're like, fuck, all right. I guess we're done talking about carriage fees. I thought we were going to go on for another hour and a half, but no, we're done. Okay, that's fine. I guess I'll tune in next time. But anyway, Janel Grant, who's over there, in his newsletter wrote that a package to renew All Elite Wrestling on Warner Brothers Discovery is, quote unquote, close to being finalized. According to him, an announcement could come as soon as next week. The number floated around is around $170 million per year. He said the deal looks like it will be for 4 years, 3 of which are guaranteed, and there is also an option attached. In a bit that kind of confused me, and I don't know if it confused you, he said that AEW programming would air in this new agreement on TNT, TBS, and True TV twice a week. Now, we'll go back to that and kind of figure out what he's trying to say there. He also stated that AEW is pitching another package of content to broadcast channels, but that is unrelated to the WBD renewal. And now today, Tony Khan was on Busted Open. Why, I don't know, but Tony Khan was on Busted Open and basically said that, I forget his exact wording, but essentially like it's done, or it looks really good, or I don't know. I forget his exact.
I have his exact wording. His exact wording was 100%. His quote was, I quote, "I can say with 100% certainty AEW and TBS and TNT are here to stay for a long time," end quote. So, I don't know. 100% certainty.
That seems
his exact words.
Pretty certain. Okay, so we'll lock that in then with 100% certainty. So, all right. So we got there the $170 million per year, kind of the big shots we'll hit here, and then we'll kind of recap it. 4 years, 3 of which are guaranteed. Also an option attached. Programming airing on TNT, TBS, and True TV twice a week. So we'll start with those, and then we'll get to the broadcast channels package and all the other stuff. Any reaction that you had to that, and anything with the dollar amount, the years, the programming, anything else that stood out to you real big? Because I think we can kind of, without knowing the exact terms, and I guess we'll probably have that by next week or the week after, whatever. We're just going to kind of go under the assumption that what Overrun is saying is going to happen, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe the numbers are going to change a little bit. Maybe the years are going to change a little bit. Probably not. If he's already putting it out there and Tony's not distancing himself from that, I feel like we're probably there. But I don't know. What's your comfort level on just going with these numbers and going with these years?
Well, I'm not until there's some kind of a official announcement or official report because he's saying the 170 million is in the ballpark, and he's saying that the 170 million that's been floating around wrestling message boards is in the ballpark. What is he talking about? What wrestling message
from
boards?
2006. Yeah, Tony Khan from 2006. Yeah, the IGN boards, the Wrestle Crap boards, the ROH. What was the ROH board or whatever the ROH forum was called?
Course, yeah, the ROH boards. You know, the ROH boards. If there were shows happening out of town that you weren't at, you'd refresh those madly all night to get the results.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. I was a consistent reporter. Everybody would look to me for the Chicago reports, and I know that you used. That's how actually I think you and I used to converse on there occasionally as well. But I would always.
No, I didn't post on the ROH board. I never posted on.
Did you ever? Did you lurk or did you just?
Yes.
Oh, maybe you were a lurker. I think maybe you would lurk and then report elsewhere on other message boards about what was being posted about the Ring of Honor show. But yeah, I was a consistent, like, get to my car right away. And this is in the days when, like, I didn't have like a phone that handy.
No one did.
So it would be like,
there were no smartphones.
Yeah, I didn't have a black. I wasn't one of these, incredible.
Maybe a BlackBerry.
Maybe, but I didn't. Yeah, so I would just like rush home. Like my friends would be like, "Hey, you want to go do something?" I'm like, "No, I can't. I gotta go home." And they're like, "We're gonna go out. No." And then the first thing I did, I ran through the door, ran up to my room, and then typed up, "All right, here's what happened at the Chicago show," or whatever. And it's like,
so six
people were waiting for it.
Yeah,
exactly. But then people were waiting for it. You're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Thank you." Like that was the lifeline to find out what was happening. And you, like you're saying, you refreshed it. I always would refresh because they would do usually they would do like a Dayton or a Detroit shot or something like that before they came to Chicago. So that Friday night, I was refreshing to see what the fuck was happening in Dayton or whatever, because then tomorrow they're going to come to Chicago. So, oh my God, what's going to happen tomorrow when they get? So yeah, I love the old days, the ROH boards. But apparently that is where these the rumors of the TV deal are being bandied about.
Is he just using the term wrestling message boards as like an all encapsulating, wrestling community sort of thing? Because there's no wrestling boards where, first of all, where anywhere is anybody talking about this 170 million? First time I heard about it was from him. Like, we couldn't be more in the weeds into this niche, and I haven't seen anyone throwing around that 170 million figure that he claims is being tossed around on, quote, wrestling message boards. So at any rate, wherever he's been seeing that, he claims that the deal is somewhere in that ballpark for 3 years with a 4th year option. If it's 3 years, it'd be about $510 million. If it's all 4 years, it would come out to about $680 million. And to just give a point of reference, both Dave Meltzer and Brandon Thurston have done revenue estimates and profit and loss estimates for AEW, and they both generally come up with very similar numbers, right? Because Meltzer said anything around, I think he said 120 million was the number that AEW, if they hit that with their media rights deal, they'd be in pretty good shape. And anything over 120 million a year, they'd be in tremendous shape and they'd be profitable. Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at how Brandon Thurston broke down AEW's 2023 year, it's essentially in the same ballpark of the number Meltzer came up with. Thurston's estimate, to give people a frame of reference, was that in 2023, not 2024, which is still going on, 2023, he estimated that AEW's revenue was $154 million. Okay. Some of that based on, hard factual evidence, like, Polestar data and Gates and things like that, other things that he had to estimate. And you could go through his whole methodology if you read the article. Well, this new TV deal would eclipse the entirety of that revenue estimate from 2023 if it's $170 million a year. That's just, to give people a frame of reference of how much money this is. He also estimated that AEW in 2023 lost about $30 to $40 million. So as you can see, if their TV deal is going from the AAV of the original TV deal was like 44 million a year, but then they added collision and then there's escalators. So Brandon has estimated that this year, 2024, they're probably getting somewhere between 80, I think he said 80 or $90 million per year for TV. So you have to factor that in. That would jump to 170 million, right? Which would obviously eat up 30 to $40 million in losses pretty easily. Okay. Because you're looking at anywhere from, if you want to go low end and high end of these estimates, $70 to $100 million more in revenue just from the television alone, just from this deal alone, which would, that 70 to 100 million would eat up the 30 to $40 million in losses that they had, in the sample of 2023. So that's why people like Dave Meltzer has been pretty headstrong on saying, hey, look, if they get more than, say, 100, 120 million on this TV deal, they're going to be profitable now, right? And Thurston's estimates concur. And he did a whole thorough write-up last December behind his paywall at WrestleNomics, breaking down all the estimated revenue and expenditures to come up with these figures. So from that standpoint, if it is $170 million a year, and there's no reason to think many of their expenditures have you look at talent, right? So I think Thurston estimated an $85 million payroll based on the number of people, the wrestlers they had on their website, times I think he did a $450,000 average salary. I think that may have been a little on the high end, but you want to estimate high when you do things like
Of course.
this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, either way, if you want to say their payroll is higher in 2024 because they hired Will Ospreay, Sasha Banks, and Kazuchika Okada, and
now Ricochet,
whoever else
yeah.
and whoever else, Ricochet, whoever else got raises, okay? Let's say Banks or Monet, let's say Monet, Ospreay, and Okada are making $5 million a year, okay? And I think all three of them are probably making a little below that. Maybe Monet's making 5, but Meltzer kind of shit on the idea that Okada's getting 5. The three of them are averaging it's somewhere between $1 million and $5 million each, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
Again,
That's safe to assume. Yeah.
And they all probably fall somewhere in that range, right? Let's say they're all making $5 million a year. So you add $15 million to the payroll. Let's throw in $1 million for Ricochet. That's $16 million. Let's throw in another $5 million for other wrestlers that were signed, other wrestlers that received extensions. You're still only looking at somewhere around $20 million in added payroll, and we're estimating high. Again, this television deal would cover all of that as well and still leave them with some profit.
I do find that funny because you'll see some of these pundits and be like, I don't know, is AEW profitable? I'm like, how much do you think they're paying people? If it's like, even, after this deal, if you're like, oh, I don't know, is this deal going to finally make them profitable? I'm not sure about that. It's, what do you think the expenditures are for this company? Like that's insane to think.
Well, they are paying people, they're paying people a lot, but that's but this deal would cover that.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. They're not paying people
high,
$150 million, and then there's another $20 million in operating costs. Like, that's wild to think that is like that they'd be anywhere near. It's no doubt in my mind that if they signed a TV deal for $170 million per year, that they would be more than covering most of the expenditures in the company. There's no way that you could think that anything else.
Even if you think Brandon's estimate of $85 million for the 2023 payroll is low, let's bump it up to 100. A lot of people have said 100. That's still just another $15 million. The TV deal still would cover all of that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
right.
At the $170 million per year level, that's going to cover up the estimated losses. It's going to cover up the 2023 payroll and whatever you think the 2024 payroll might be, because we just went through it and we estimated high. We're adding $25 million to the payroll this year, and this new TV deal would still cover that. I don't think they've added $25 million in payroll, okay? Because the big three, even if they're making $5 million each, that's only 15 there. So, and Ricochet, I guess, was a signing, and then there's some smaller sign, but those people aren't making in the millions. I might be am I forgetting anybody? I don't think I am.
Anybody that would be making very clearly making that 1 to 5 million range? No, I don't think there's anybody else.
I don't think I am. I mean, there could be one or two others, and if so, people still get the gist of my point here. Here's the other thing: it's not just 170 million, because Khan is shopping it's not exclusive rights, so he's shopping another media rights package to the networks. And as last week while you were gone, I talked about how Fox is the network that a lot of people think that they're talking to, which is going to be the Victory Lap and all Victory Laps if they end up on Big Fox. I'm not so sure that they will. It very much could be FS1. It very much could be one of Fox's cable properties. It could be another network, like it can't be CW, but maybe I've heard people talk about Ion.
I don't think it can't be CW. I think Dave talked about that, and he says he does not believe that NXT has exclusive rights on the CW.
Well, then there you go. Then maybe that opens it up to where it could be Ion or CW, right? And in that case, now you're talking about a secondary rights package, which is going to add more revenue. And who knows, even if that's only 20 million, right? Well, what did we just cover? We just covered Ospreay, Monet, and Okada's salaries that everybody claims is going to be the breaking point that's going to sink the company because you sign these free agents. I've done this math all day, and I'm staring at notes, and I can't come up with figures to where this alleged bloated roster and payroll is preventing them from making money if they're getting an $170 million deal. Now, the other on top of whatever they sell the secondary package for. And by the way, also on top of whatever they add internationally, because WWE moving to Netflix opened up dozens of these international television contracts. Now, they're not going to get all of them. Okay? Some of these international networks are going to wipe their hands and move on, but the ones that are still going to want wrestling content, or who AEW is going to shop their wrestling content to, because they're going they're going to get some of them. And some of them are going to be significant. Some of them are going to be small potatoes, like TNA style deal. TNA and MLW. How many years did we hear about TNA's international deals?
Oh yeah,
it's like you're selling a television package in the Caribbean or to some small nation in Asia or Africa or South America, and it's probably a couple $100,000 a year at best. But it still adds up, and there are some big tickets one out there. I think India is available.
India, UK, they're all available. Yeah, for people that don't remember, and we talked about it when the news of the WWE Netflix deal came, is essentially what's happening is WWE is wiping their hands and ending all of their international things and saying, hey, look, if you want WWE programming, it'll be on Netflix. And that's internationally, everywhere else. Netflix is doing it. And we talked about it at the time that essentially what's happening is WWE is kind of wiping their hands of being in the TV negotiation business. They're basically saying, Netflix, give us a bunch of money and it's up to you guys. We'll give you content. You guys give us money, and that's the end of it. So the international TV deals, all that sort of stuff, all these different, your ITVs, your TNT Sports, your these things that matter in India and the UK and elsewhere or whatever. WWE is wiping their hands of all of it and saying, just watch our shit on Netflix. That's the place where you get all of the WWE content. And so that is opening up those contracts and those networks that, like Joe was saying, if they still want sports programming, wrestling programming, and they want to fill in that gap, they can sign with AEW and get it at most likely very, much smaller margins than what they were getting WWE programming. But that does also open up another, pretty decent revenue stream that was not available until WWE wiped their hands of the international deals.
Yeah, and people have to understand that another thing people tend to get wrapped up in is just comparing. The television media rights is obviously the biggest piece, and it has been in pro wrestling for the last decade or so, I guess, since WWE signed their first big one in 2014 or something like that. But and I hate to evoke the name, but I'm just going to do it to make a point. I saw Eric Bischoff opining that how's this deal going to cover all of the cost of goods, the cost of doing the television shows, and that's what he said. The cost of running the TV shows, and he literally said, I haven't seen anyone look at AEW's expenses or estimate what they spend, and he did the usual thing that most of these kinds of people do and talked about the roster and what it costs and the cost of goods of running the shows. It's funny because Eric Bischoff in that same podcast constantly referenced WrestleNomics when he wanted to make a point about AEW's ratings and how bad they are year over year, saying, hey, look, I'm just talking facts. It's right there on WrestleNomics if anybody wants to see it. And then the very same, just moments later says how, why are we assuming that this deal is going to make them profitable when nobody has estimated their expenses? Well, Dave Meltzer's been estimating their expenses for years. Well, okay, Eric Bischoff is going to say that Dave Meltzer is a carny dirt sheet hack and all that. Fine. But he literally cites WrestleNomics all the time as a credible source when it comes to ratings. And I guess he just subscribes so he gets the rating push notifications, because I've been citing Brandon Thurston's AEW financial estimate for 2023 on this podcast repeatedly, which Eric Bischoff has access to because he subscribes to WrestleNomics, yet he claims that nobody is doing these things. And we don't know what the expenditures are because no one's estimating it.
Which is also convenient too, because if you did know that, because we always talk about this with Bischoff, is he's smart in the sense that he understands what he's doing. There's some people that are truly just completely lost, and those people I'm just like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. You're completely lost.
Well, in this case, I don't think he knows that this exists on the subscription service that he pays for.
Right, he might not, but also even if he did know, it's inconvenient for his
play dumb. Yeah.
He'd play dumb because it's inconvenient to say, oh, this TV deal makes him profitable. Okay, well, I got nothing more to say, and then signs off the podcast. You know what I mean? Like the whole podcast. Well,
because the other thing is, you're right, because he can't acknowledge it and then bash Brandon's estimates, because then he's bashing Brandon's credibility.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yes, and then it comes full circle, because then it's like, oh, well, you're bashing this guy's credibility, but you're telling us to listen to his ratings analysis.
Right, so right? He's fine with the objective facts that Brandon puts out there, which is the ratings, and those things are very clearly numbers, and there's nothing to really argue about. He's fine with that, but if then, he saw these estimates. There's no way that he could, which he would probably likely do because that's what his audience wanted him to do, is bury these estimates. Oh, yeah, no, they're probably even higher than this. I ran a wrestling company. I know the expenditures and nobody's really, thinking about all yada, yada, yada. That would then fly in the face of the credibility. And he's kind of attached himself to Brandon WrestleNomics as these guys are telling the truth because they just put out the numbers.
The anti-Dave.
Right.
Yeah. He uses Brandon as his don't listen to Dave, even though Brandon and Dave do, when it comes to business analysis, do practically the same thing. Right. And they both do a great job. And as I noted, Brandon and Dave have essentially come up with very similar expenditure and revenue estimates. Because if you look at what Brandon did for the 2023 deal, and I believe Dave's number was 120 million. I think he said that was the sort of if it's below that, it's a so-so deal. If it's above that, they're golden. Wasn't it 120? Because if you look at that 120, it basically covers it matches up with what Brandon had to say for 2023. So they're doing it independently, but coming up with very similar numbers. What does that tell you? Right, that they're both in the ballpark.
Two smart people are able that know this business pretty well, are able to kind of figure things out and get to a relatively similar.
Yeah, and if there's a third person who's done this, who's coming up with drastically different figures, show it to me. I'd love to see it, and I'd love to know what their credentials are, and I'd like to see their methodology because Thurston has it all spelled out here, and Dave's been doing it for 4 decades. So, I guess my point here is, just with the 170, if that's what the number ends up being, and that's all we have to work with right now, it does appear that it will make AEW profitable in 2025 based on even adding above and beyond to their payroll and even subtracting a bit. Like, Wembley obviously did $3 or $4 million less this year than they did the year prior. Their ticket sales year over year, I think, are down. So you have to subtract a little there. Right. But this would still cover that. And that's not even factoring in the second media rights deal that they might nail down. And, they've already got this trademark, which people are assuming is for a new television show that's either being sold to the networks or as part of this bizarre, because Orand reported that there will be AEW programming twice a week on all 3 WB networks.
That was very confusing. I just don't know if he didn't know what was going on or it was like replays or something. That was perplexing to me. That I didn't understand. It said all 3 networks twice a week, and I was like, I got to figure out what that is all about. So I don't know if he got crossed up there or something didn't quite, or something got lost in translation or whatever. But that one definitely confused me a bit. It was a good point from the chat room, No Dopes chat room. Samuel Stroud says CM Punk is off the books this year too.
Oh, right. So he would cancel out one of the big 3 signings.
Right.
Essentially, you could basically cancel out Punk for Monday if you wanted to, right?
Probably,
but,
yeah. Punk was probably in that level. Whereas, I know a couple people were bringing up that Swerve re-signed and probably got a nice, healthy, upgrade to his contract. But Swerve, whatever Swerve signed for, is not. Punk was in the money category, right? I think we could probably safely assume that
Punk
he was
is probably
in
the highest paid person in the history of the company, unless it's the Bucks,
right?
Or somebody like that, or Moxley. Punk. Would it shock anyone if he was the highest paid person in the history of AEW? No.
Oh, God, no.
Would it shock anyone if Mercedes is the highest paid person in the history of AEW? No. They could reasonably cancel each other out. They're in the same gated community is the point here. If you're doing a hierarchy of so they would get. The point here is the larger point I wanted to make when I got granular with the salary thing is I think people make too much of that because even when you do the math and even when you add in the new salaries and estimate as high as possible, based on other expenditure estimates, and when you look at Brandon's work, a lot of it isn't just blind guessing. I mean, we have a general idea what it costs to run a show, for example, right? And then the other expenditures, what he does is he just takes a percentage of the of the revenue, the same percentage of revenue that are on the WWE books, and applies it to AEW's revenue. You see, so it's in the ballpark. It's not going to be wildly off base. So I don't think that their salaries with this TV deal. Okay, now with the previous media rights deal they had, yes, they were probably losing money. Okay, but the guy had to build a roster, or he doesn't get the new TV deal. You know what I mean? So it's like, and he knew the new TV deal was likely going to cover it. or if he didn't know, he gambled and he won. And they're going to get a second media rights deal. Now, the one caveat we should talk about is there's no mention of what's happening with the pay-per-view. So how many they run 12 pay-per-views now, one a month?
I don't know if they
like
got
that.
all the way to 12 this year exactly, but they're right about there. I forget exactly what
12,
they're at, but it's close.
If it's not 12, the chat will correct us because there's a lot of freakazoids in there. All right, so let's estimate how many average buys do you want to do per pay-per-view? You want to estimate low?
Sure.
Do you want to say 110,000 buys per pay-per-view? Is that
that's probably, or you want to do 100? Maybe just do 100,000. Make it even lower. Make it a nice lower, even rounder number. Make it 100,000 if you want. Because I know Dynasty, I think, was estimated to be somewhere in that 100 to 105 range. I want to say that they said. So if you want to, and that was the lowest one though. For the record, that was the lowest one. So I don't know if you want to even make that the one. But
so
okay,
they're saying 10 pay-per-view. I think they're going to be doing 12 of that. But let's just go with 10. All right, so that would be with nice round numbers, $10 million in the pay-per-view revenue gross. Okay, 10 events times 100,000. You don't even need a calculator for that. That'd be 1 million pay-per-view buys times the $50. So that's $50 million gross on pay-per-view. Now you can get really crazy with this and do, because with the American buys, you're splitting it with the cable companies. The international buys, the splits are different, and if you're buying direct and all those things. But let's just go with the 50. Now, if that's part of this $170 million, you lose a lot of value on that deal. Okay, if WBD is buying the pay-per-views, okay, and then it's sort of the UFC ESPN Plus situation, and then you're buying the pay-per-views from on Max, and AEW is washing their hands of that, and they're essentially selling off their pay-per-view business to WBD, that $170 million then loses a lot of its value because now AEW is no longer collecting pay-per-view revenue. So we do have to wait for that piece of it. And that's an interesting piece of it. Now, we don't know if the pay-per-views are going to Max, we don't know if there's going to be more money, if that's part of the 170, or if AEW is just keeping the pay-per-views and continuing to sell them on their own, which, would be best for them because that's a lot of revenue on the table that they don't have to cut a separate deal for and sell it off. WWE, UFC, TKO's philosophy has been to just, fuck it, let's just sell the rights to the pay-per-views and let those people worry about selling them. Okay? We'll put together good cards, or I don't believe WWE puts their best foot forward when it comes to putting together the cards for Peacock. In my, UFC, I don't know enough about it. Just what little I do know, I think that they do try to put together good cards. But either way, we have to kind of set that aside because we don't know what the pay-per-view piece is here. And Orans didn't report anything about that. Probably because he's not an in-the-weeds wrestling guy, and that wouldn't be top of mind for him.
Right. He deals with, people do not know him, he deals with most, sports TV business or whatever. And to him, that doesn't really matter. That if you're talking about a TV deal between a sports company, a sports league, and a station, you're not going to really worry about the pay-per-views or whatever. That's a very there how many things are even doing pay-per-view unless you're in the weeds in boxing, UFC, or WWE. And really, if you're in the weeds in only boxing at this point, because UFC has pretty much, like you said, thrown in the towel on pay-per-views, that would not be something you would even ask about or think about or whatever. We would, because we're in the weeds. We know the importance of pay-per-view still to AEW, but to most people analyzing the business and analyzing sports business, pay-per-view is completely irrelevant.
Yeah, and remember, a lot of people, I see this a lot from people who should know better. It's like they take the media rights deal and they work under that premise that that's the entirety of the revenue, right? Like that 170 million, no, there's going to be, even if there's not a secondary rights package, there's ticket sales, there's pay-per-view revenue, there's licensing, there's all these other pieces of revenue. The media rights is just the biggest piece. So it's so funny when people, try to estimate expenditures and they do it strictly against the media rights, forgetting, like, again, that 2023 estimate that Thurston put out was that AEW's revenue was $154 million. And he's estimating that 90 million of that was from the media rights due to escalators and the addition of Collision and all of those other things, raising that 44 million AAV over the years. So that's still another $64 million that of revenue from other sources that factor into the total revenue. So again, I sat here all day and moved numbers around, and I can't see how this deal wouldn't immediately make AEW profitable. There's just no math that tells you that.
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah, there's no way. It also doesn't fucking matter too, which is another thing that I really just find, because we're now moving on to the new grift. The new grift, for people who have not been following, and unfortunately we are following it in the weeds, is that now people are getting out ahead of the new TV deal, and knowing that, oh crap, AEW is not going to die because Warner Brothers is going to give them a bunch of money for a number of years or whatever, so they're not going to die from that standpoint. The new grift seems to be, or the new thing that we're worried about is AEW profitable? How can AEW get profitable? Will this deal make them profitable? And honestly, well, I'm glad we did this little exercise, and I'm glad we had fun with this. It doesn't fucking matter, because it's Tony Khan, and he's a billionaire with an unlimited amount of money at his disposal, doing something that he wants to do. He's a fucking kid that grew up on wrestling message boards, you know, in the weeds in wrestling, playing EWR, playing wrestling sim games, and now he's got a chance as an adult billionaire to play a wrestling sim game in real life. And it's like, he doesn't, I'm sure this guy doesn't, I'm sure him and his father don't want this thing bleeding money. They don't want it bleeding millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. Of course not.
Rich people like making more money.
Of course.
They like doing things that help them make more money. But we've always made the point, Tony Khan, just out of spite, is never going to let AEW
No, even if it's on the and even if it's on the margins, it's not like if oh my God, we do this TV deal and let's say hypothetically there's still $5 million in the black or whatever, or in the red or whatever.
Yeah,
he's not going to wake up and go, oh God, and Shad's not going to say, Tony, we have to have a talk. It's like $5 million to that family is fucking nothing. Go look up what the difference of $1 million and $1 billion is. I have to do that to people a lot, because people don't wrap their head around it. And if you look online and you just say $1 million versus $1 billion, there's great visualizations that can help, whether it's a stack of dollars, whether it's a box, like there's many different ways that people visualize just how big of a fucking difference $1 million and $1 billion are. Those guys have billions, multiples, and like I always say, once cars stop having bumpers and NFL teams stop being valuable and English Premier League teams aren't worth anything anymore, then you can start talking about the Khans' financials. For now, I think cars are going to keep having bumpers. I think NFL teams and EPL teams are going to still be pretty valuable, and I'm pretty sure the margins are not going to matter all that much here. So unless you think that they are honestly losing, you know, if they're losing $100 million per year in AEW, which they're not, and they never would be, and they never are, that is the only time where I really think any amount of discussion about this is relevant or worthwhile. They're not. If anything, they're losing a little bit of money on the margins. Like you said, what was the last estimate? $30 million, maybe?
Brandon's last for 2023 was $34 million.
That's
so between
nothing.
30 and let's say the reality is between 30 and 50.
You can eat that if you're the Khans for a year or two with this in the distance, is this TV rights deal. Now, can you sustain a business for 10 years losing that amount of money? I don't know. Probably. If you're the Khans, probably.
Hold on. I'll give you some math. Let's say it lost $50 million in 2023. Let's say AEW loses $50 million every year for the next 20 years. Rich, that's $1 billion. It would take 20 years for AEW to lose $1 billion. 20 years. And they have what, 20 billion or something? Whatever.
Let me see what the Khan family net worth is. Yeah.
And their net worth, and by the way, their net worth isn't going to freeze in those 20 years.
No, that money is making money. $13.3 billion to the Khan family. So
yeah. So 20 years to lose one of their 13 billion, even if they were losing 50 million a year. Which this, so yeah, it's like it's not going anywhere. On top of the fact that he would never fold up the tent because he's not going to want to because he's a poster and he's not going to want people to win.
He'll die at this club. He'll die at this club.
He'll die at this club. By the way, he also just loves doing it. He likes doing it. It's both a job, a business, and it's a gigantic source of pleasure for him. So it really, it's from that standpoint. But the thing about it is, when those type of people who hate Tony Khan and hate AEW and want to see it fail, when they talk about it not making money, Rich, I don't think they're coming at it from the standpoint of it's going to go out of business because it's not making money. If they are, they're just idiots for the reasons we just laid out. They're coming at it from the perspective of they get to call him a money mark.
He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a money mark. Yeah.
Yes, they get to say he's bad at this. They get to say it's a company that only exists because of what we just laid out, because they have billions and they can keep it alive because they want to. That argument then goes out the window. And that is a key argument for these people, that it's not a successful business only being propped up by the fail son with daddy's money.
Mm-hmm.
That they don't want to lose that argument.
Right. I would also,
so that's why
I would pose to these people, if you can give me the list of professional wrestling companies that have been profitable all time, I would love to see that list presented to me. And you know what? Let's make it fun. You can't use WWE. So give me the list of every other professional wrestling company in history that has been profitable that's not WWE. And I will wait for that list whenever you get it to me, because I think it's going to be a pretty short one. The amount of, especially post 80s like that. I mean, did TNA, I mean, how many times did TNA, I don't know. We don't
how
have
how many years did TNA turn a profit? Probably zero.
I was going to say it's probably zero. I don't know off the top of my head any years that they did turn a profit. WCW obviously turned a profit 2 years, I believe. 2 years?
2 years. 2 years,
yeah.
Right?
Maybe 3, but I think it's only 2. I don't know if they turned one in 97. I know for a fact, of course, they did in 98, and I think they still did in 99 as well.
What, 3 tops?
3
tops.
at most. Yeah, 97, 98, 99 tops for the entire history of WCW. Jim Crockett Promotions, I mean, there probably was a time, but once, you got to the competing.
Forget it. They were just
by the mid 80s they were just losing money hand over fist.
Yeah. I mean, the private jets for everybody. And
Right.
Forget it. I mean, I could give people a modern comp point. I mean, New Japan's last fiscal year, and they do theirs from June to June and not January to December or whatever. Their total revenues were $36.2 million. Revenues. Okay, $36.2 million. Now, I think New Japan, Bushi Road has squeezed out slim profits from their wrestling, from New Japan specifically, because now they're even splitting out New Japan and Stardom. They do squeeze out slim profits, but they're very small.
Mm-hmm. I think Japanese companies are maybe an exception to that. I think they do a pretty decent job of being pretty thin on the margins and stuff.
Probably just New Japan. I mean, I would suspect the rest of them are all losing money with the way attendance and business is in Japan right now.
Yeah, right now of the present, yeah, probably. There's maybe all Japan in the 90s.
In the past, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. Historically, there have been Japanese promotions that made money. There's no doubt about it. Today, it's probably, if New Japan is just eking out profits, nobody else.
Nobody else. No, Noah is not making money. Stardom, yeah.
New Japan's not doing super well.
Right, right.
So it's yeah, but that's why people approach it. Here's the non-scientific way that that people think this 170 million is a really good deal if it turns out to be the 170 million, because people are, number one, doubting that it's real. That's part of the cope. And the other piece of it is people are saying WBD is crazy for giving it to them. That's how you know it's a good deal, because the people who don't want AEW to succeed are taking one of those two tacks towards this. Oh, are they out of their minds for giving them that much money? Or, oh, this is bullshit, I'll believe it when it's not the dirt sheets reporting it, right? Like John Orand is writing a wrestling newsletter. But that's also a non-scientific method to help you tell that this is a very advantageous deal for AEW. And that a lot of people are very wrong and are going to have to find new ways to move goalposts. And it seems that the new way to do that is WBD is nuts. They should have never given them that much money. That's one cope that I've seen. And the other is, well, we're already counting down the clock till the next deal, even though this one hasn't officially started yet. So
we can't engage in this anymore. It's a never-ending cycle. We can't. Once we sign this deal, I think we have to make a promise that we can't engage with these people anymore. We got to throw in the towel on this.
you can't engage with them now, and you can't engage with them next year. As the deal starts to come to a close, you can look at where AEW is, and we don't have to engage with them, period. But we can engage with the topic and say, all right, here's where they go from here.
Yeah.
Right. 3 years is an eternity in
that's
pro wrestling.
In TV. Think of what's going on in the TV world. Think of what's going on in WBD's world. Think of where they were 3 years ago. Think of where Warner Brothers Discovery was 3 years ago and where TV was 3 years ago. And look at where TV and Warner Brothers are today. 3 years. That's not even counting the fourth, even if they do that. That's an eternity. That is so long. Of course, they're not going to sign them to a 15-year deal or a 20-year deal or whatever. They don't know if they're going to be a company in 3 years. They don't know if TV is going to exist in 3 years. Nobody knows anything about this world. So yeah, that's I saw people kind of scoff at that years, and I'm thinking you just don't get. I mean, I know that a lot of these big time sports properties got like huge deals, but AEW is not the NBA. AEW is not Major League Baseball. AEW is not the NFL. AEW is still a professional wrestling property. It's a good sports property. It's a good property to have, but it's not one of these ones that's going to be a hallmark of your network like those other big time sports are. But yeah, if I'm WBD, I'm not going to sign these guys to a 10-year deal because I don't know what I'm going to be in 10 years. I don't know what TV is going to be in 10 years. I don't know what any of that stuff is going to be.
Well, the counter would be WWE got a deal that's up to 20 years from Netflix.
But as you and I pointed out, and smart people pointed out when that deal got signed, look at the wording of that deal. It's a 5-year deal. It's a 5-year deal with options to extend it.
Yeah, it's a 5-year deal.
Because the option is Netflix's option to extend it or not. So that's not a 20-year deal, because in 5 years, Netflix can either decide, yeah, we want more, or no, we're done. And WWE is powerless. It's not a mutual option there. It's not WWE can't say, well, we actually want to stay on for 20 more years. Netflix can just say we're good after 5 years. So that's a 5-year deal masquerading as a 20-year deal. So I would fight back on that point immediately too.
And the AEW deal coming up, whether it's 3 years or whether it gets extended to the fourth, their deal coming to an end before that 5-year period could be seen as an advantage in the marketplace as well. Depending on how things fall with TV. Because like we both look, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in wrestling is an eternity, especially compared to other sports. If you sign Major League Baseball or the NFL or NBA or a lot of these major sports properties, a major college conference or whatever, you pretty much know what you're going to get for those next 8 to 10 years when you sign that deal. Wrestling is far more cyclical. It's far more cyclical and has far more wild swings in terms of business. WWE has become more stable over the last couple of years, but if people think they're going to be immune to swings, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. Wrestling fans are very fickle. Wrestling fans come and go. People get very into wrestling historically, and then they just lose interest in it, and they never come back. Right? We've seen that play out.
Think of how big wrestling was in 1998 in the peak of the Attitude Era. How many people were watching wrestling on a weekly basis? Look, I was a young child. I was 13, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 in that era, and all my friends watched wrestling. And one by one, little by little, they all stopped watching wrestling. And after by 2001, 2002, I was the only one still watching wrestling. Like that. Yeah, of course that can happen. They're not locked in for the rest of eternity to being a big deal. It's impossible. It's just not how wrestling is.
Now, do I think AEW's ratings downturn the last 18 months or so hurt their negotiating leverage and hurt the number that they're going to get? Yes, obviously it did.
Of course,
be a fool to say it didn't. But we don't know what it's going to look like, what their numbers are going to look like. Now here's why. We never wavered that they were going to not just get another media rights deal, but a very advantageous one. We have always been steadfast on that. We never did doom speak regarding that. We were always confident in that. We spoke because the year over year negative growth is alarming when you look at it, when you look at the big red number on the sheet. What isn't nearly as alarming is how all of the AEW shows, not just Dynamite, do in comparison to their competition on television. And that's really all that matters in terms of scoring these deals. Dynamite is always top 5. Sometimes it's number 1. It's often number 3 on Wednesdays and sometimes overall on cable. Okay, for the week. The only thing it basically doesn't beat is Raw and sports. And occasionally when there's news. Like last night, for example, Gutfeld won the night, they had Trump on.
They had, yeah.
You're not
and Tyrus
beating that.
and former NWA champion Tyrus, 10 pounds of gold.
Don't leave out Tyrus when
Yeah.
he's on every week. But
He's on every week, but regardless, he was still on. So that still counts. Yeah, but no, I think people don't wrap their head around that. I know Brandon put that out.
They don't wrap their head around that. And even Collision and Rampage, in comparison to their time slots on cable, as shitty as those numbers look, and believe me, they look shitty. And they could be doing better, and they were doing better. But again, that's not what's driving this. WBD's not looking at, look, they're not thrilled, I'm sure, but they're not looking at that saying, well, you've got, negative 27% growth on, or whatever it is for this show. You know what they're looking at? They're looking at Rampage being a top 10 show in their time slot, sometimes top 5. They're looking at Collision, as I know that, there's been weeks where Collision's number 1 in their time slot on cable.
Yeah.
It won't be any more while college football is happening in the time slots. And that's what's valuable to WBD. And the surface level analysis, these people don't look at that. And you see so much ignorance. And that's why we were confident they were going to get an advantageous deal, because these shows, despite the declines and despite the losses in audiences that are outpacing the loss of cord cutting, remember, WWE was in that same boat not that long ago. A half a day, they were losing audience faster than the pace of the cord cutting before they got things turned around. Okay. Sami Zayn, the MVP of the company that nobody ever talks about. Okay. Now that's happening to AEW. And despite that, these shows are still performing well in comparison to the rest of television, which is why we were always confident they were going to get this kind of deal, because that's what matters.
Yeah, and Brandon put this out a little bit earlier, and he does this pretty often. He does, cable primetime rankings in 18 to 49 by quarter, just to kind of give people an idea of the different wrestling shows. Now, Collision, that's a great one that you bring up, because Collision debuts Q2 2023 and finishes 3rd in the daily median cable primetime rankings for 18 to 49. Normally, you rank it all up for that quarter, 18 to 49, it finished 3rd, which is good. That's good. You
with
like
Punk.
That. Yeah, that's with Punk. Q3 2023, it drops to 4th. Q4 2023, it drops to 5th. Then it picks back up. Quarter 1 2024, which again, people will never...
Despite the audience going down.
Yes. Now it is 4th in Q1 2024. In Q2 2024, it was 3rd. That's the Q that we just got done with. Right. It was 3rd
the
in
last
18 to 49.
one we have data for.
Yeah. And to date, Q3 is at 5th again, which is, again, a drop, but that's fine.
Top 5.
Yeah, top 5 is okay.
They started top 5 with the big audience, and now with an audience that sometimes is in the 200,000 total viewer range, they're still in the top 5.
Yeah.
And the last quarter we have data for, they were 3rd, which is where they started when Punk was on the show.
Right.
And they were doing 6 or whatever it was, 500,000 viewers or whatever it was at that time.
And now Rampage has hurt a little bit more. I mean, it was 6th in Q2 2024, but that is a horrific time slot, and they know that. And that is one that people have talked about, that if you are going to move any AEW property and change any AEW property with this new deal, that might be the one that goes. But with that said, this is also a thing that finishes 6th in the quarter, and it's on Friday at some fucking horrible time or whatever. That's
Friday at 10 o'clock. Rampage used to be an exceptional performer in its time slot. Now it's a solid performer in its time slot. Like I said, there's no doubt that this number was hurt by their recent ratings before. You can't deny that. But these are still solid and exceptional performing shows in some cases. Dynamite's an exceptional performing show on cable. There's no doubt. Come on. Meltzer makes this point all the time. Dynamite is sometimes first in its night. It's always top 5 in its night. It's often top 5 in cable, right? Out of tens of thousands of cable shows. And I don't think people have that perspective. You know why? They're constantly just stacking this stuff up to Raw. Well, look what Raw's doing. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, it's an easy comp because it's all wrestling. But, in the pantheon of the television business, Dynamite performs exceptionally strong, even with this loss of viewership over the last 18 months.
By the way, Dynamite was 3rd, Q2 2024. Raw was 2nd, so it's it's not like we're talking Raw number 1 and Dynamite's 7th. It's
now that ranking isn't the only thing you're looking at, obviously, because
of course
Raw's doubling the demo number, more than doubling the demo number, and that's where the advertising numbers come in and everything. But it helps show the point that this is what we have been, you and I have been looking at during all of this nonsense and saying they're going to get a deal. And they're probably going to get a good to great deal. And it looks like they got a very good deal, bordering on great deal. I would call this deal, if this is what it is, if it doesn't include the pay-per-view, this is a very good bordering on great deal for them, is what I would call this. I would have guessed a little lower than 170, and it might come in a lower than a little than 170. I don't know, but this is in the ballpark of being a very good deal for them. And there's no way you can work this math to where it's like, man, they're fucked for the next 4 years. I don't see it. They're profitable now. They're going to be profitable off of this. And then we see it's the other facets of their business. I mean, they got to figure out how to sell some fucking tickets. What they need to do is apply some of these profits towards something, marketing or just a different way to promote these shows. They can't sell tickets. I have been ranting about this for months, if not a full over a year at this point. The more concerning number to me is the ticket sales than the television ratings. How many times have I said that?
Absolutely, and that's one that Dave, will always point to, and in both directions too. He says, and this is, he'd bring it back into mid '90s WCW, he'd bring it into WWF, he'd bring it in all of wrestling. He would say, the ratings are one thing, and the ratings, ups and downs or whatever, but always look at live. That is where if you're getting hot or if you're getting cold, is what is going on at the buildings. That's how you know. You knew WCW was getting hot before the ratings got going because the house show business started, really getting going. WWF, you knew before the Attitude Era ratings bonanza that the house show business was starting to do a little bit better. And on the flip side too, oh shit, things are starting to go down. And it's always it was the house show business back in the day, and now it's probably TV, because house shows are so relevant to the main world of major American professional wrestling at this point. Now you can look at the week to week attendances for these TV shows, and it is a very, very troubling number. But
it's actually more telling in the reverse, because people stop buying tickets before they'll stop watching TV.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because there's not that much investment in watching TV. I'm on my fucking couch. Right. I'll turn it on or whatever.
You do it, and you watch out of habit anyway. So it's like for people who watch Dynamite, they watch it either Wednesday at 8 p.m. or they watch it on their DVR. Probably think about this if you're a listener. If you watch Dynamite or Raw or any of these shows on your DVR, you probably watch them right around the same time every week. Probably the same night of the week and probably right around the same time. It's probably not wildly inconsistent. If you DVR Dynamite, and you're someone who you probably watch it, I don't know, later on Wednesday at midnight or something, or you watch it Thursday when you come home from work, or you catch up on it on the weekend, and that's probably consistent each and every week, right? Because television viewing is more of you become a creature of habit when it comes to TV. Whereas buying a ticket, you got to buy the ticket. You got to spend the money. You got to get in the fucking car or on the fucking train. You got to go to the show. That's what the house shows die first. People will stop buying tickets before they stop watching the TV. The TV is a habit kind of deal. And as we've seen, look, TNA is another good example. There's been historically where TNA would do pretty decent numbers of viewers and consistent, and the viewership wouldn't change. What was the meme? 1.2 million each and every week?
1.1, 1.2, 1.1, 1.2. Yeah.
But they could not convert them to pay-per-view buyers. They could not convert them to ticket buyers. TNA historically during that period has some of the worst viewer to pay-per-view buyer conversion rates in pro wrestling history. So people will watch TV every fucking week. They're slower to give up on the TV. They give up on buying tickets quickly. The tickets is a major concern because it's getting worse and not getting better. And that should be their focus, especially now that they got this deal. The TV ratings will take care of themselves. If your product gets hot again, people are going to watch it. That's all there is to it. And as long as you're being competitive within the realm of television and not worrying about what Raw is doing, you're fine. Because as you can see, it nets you a deal like this. If we turn around in 4 years when this deal is up and all three of these shows are still top 5 each quarter, they're going to get another good deal. That's how this works. Rich, how many times did we talk about WWE media rights deals while they were siphoning viewers? And they always got double. Yep. They kept doubling their fucking... As long as you're outperforming everything else on TV. That's the thing. these lessons, the reason we were so confident is because just fucking pay attention to history. WWE's been doing this for a decade. They did nothing but lose viewers for a decade. And what did we come on here and say every time? It doesn't matter. They're going to get a gigantic deal. They're going to get a gigantic renewal. It doesn't matter that they're losing the viewers because they're still dominating on Monday night. They're still, so we even have history to draw from, and people were still being stupid about this.
Hey guys, this is Rich, obviously co-host of the Flagship Podcast here on the Voice Wrestling Podcast Network. We'll get right back to the Flagship. Before we do that, though, I do want to let you know that this particular episode of the Flagship Podcast is sponsored by our friends XBet. If you are passionate about sports and looking for a thrill, you need to check out the freshly redesigned XBet. They're calling it the last sportsbook you'll ever join. I've been playing on XBet, and they really do have it all, whether it's odds on basketball, combat sports, or even betting on the next Bitcoin dip. And the best part is, when you win, you get paid quick. But it's not just about placing bets. No. XBet is a whole experience. They support athletes and sports shows like ours, and they give back to the community with tons of free bets and cash prize contests. Did I mention they also have a casino now? Yes, you can spin the slots, play some roulette, or try your luck at the live tables, all from a mobile platform that lets you enjoy the fun on the go. Whether you're super into sports betting or just curious about trying it out, you need a site that makes it fun and easy, and that's why you've got to check out XBet. Sign up today using promo code VOW and get a generous bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Again, that's promo code VOW at XBet. X as in, DMX bet. And use that promo code VOW for a free cash bonus to kickstart your betting journey. There's great UFC cards on the high horizon. Baseball season's in full swing. Football's just about to come. There's never been a better time to play. Again, go to XBet. Use that promo code VOW. Get a generous bonus of up to $1,000 off your first deposit. Promo code VOW. Sign up today at xbet.ag. Make your next bet XBet. And now, back to the Flagship.
Is this a victory lap? Is it? Is that what we're doing? Is this a victory lap?
It's pretty damn close. I think once we lock it in, lap. I feel like next week whenever it does officially get announced, we can then maybe do a full on victory lap. But I feel like we're kind of there because we never wavered. We were steadfast in the idea that they would get a new TV rights deal, and to me, I didn't even fathom the idea of them not getting a TV rights deal. I never even fathomed them not getting a significant upgrade and getting this rights deal. I know that other people did, and I just can't get in that headspace. I can't understand how you can look at the history and study sports TV and sports business and not think that these guys were going to get not only a renewal, but also a relatively big upgrade as well. I mean, we never wavered on that. So I guess if you want to go victory lap, I'm fine doing a victory lap here. You know what? Fuck it. Let's victory lap. Because
this is WWE. When was their first big deal? 2014? 2014, right?
Yeah.
The business changing one.
Yeah.
The idiot proof deal. This is what they did over the course of like 3 deals over a decade. This is on a smaller scale. That's exactly what this is. Mm-hmm. They're losing viewers. They're fucked. No, they're not. They're going to get double. You know, here's what's interesting too. I want to make sure I get the guy that Post had on
Brandon Ross. Brandon Ross.
It's Brandon Ross guy. This guy now, he's not a wrestling guy. He's a bit. Well, he is. For his outlet, which I don't have the name of handy.
I'll get it here for you in a minute.
They're a sports media or a business media outlet, and he covers the pro wrestling and MMA side of that. I believe, at least that's the way they laid it out. Either way, this guy was brought on as sort of an expert in these matters, and he had a really baffling take. You know, he was he talked about essentially how WBD now, Orand labeled the deal as a great deal for AEW. I don't know if those were Orand's exact words, but he said it was. He was very positive on the deal. What's interesting to me is
Brandon Ross. Just not to interrupt, is he's of Light Shed Partners.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So
he does kind of the like you said, sort
venture
of
capital.
Yeah, right.
These kind of people.
Yeah.
So he's a business analyst. So anyway, he talked about, and it's not just him, because I've seen this sort of line of thought from other people too. I'm using him as the jump off to make my point. He talked about how WWE got this great deal, with this Netflix deal, and how great the deal was, even though it didn't meet investor expectations, and even though it didn't meet what internally they thought they were going to get, because remember, they didn't get the raise they thought they were going to, that they were seeking, and they didn't get the raise and the increase that the investors thought they were going to get. So they failed on both counts. They didn't get what they were seeking. There wasn't enough competition in the marketplace to drive it up to what they thought they were going to get or what investors thought they were going to get. But he still termed it as he used the word great. He's like, they got this great deal, and they're well positioned and all of that.
It's also one that, again, threw in all their international deals and threw those out. So all the future revenue gains and all the international deals are gone too. But,
international, but
yep.
Great. Now, look, it's a lot of money. There's no doubt about it. I'm not saying it's terrible. We talked about it. It's not a terrible deal. But, let's pump the brakes. They didn't get what they were gunning for. But the point here is the way that this guy talked about the AEW potential deal, and the way that I see other people talking about it is framed in a way that AEW is doing poorly. AEW is on shaky ground. But, man, WBD, they must have been desperate because they gave these people way more money than they ever should have gotten. All right, well, I understand the differences in the deals in terms of total dollars is enormous, but one company got way more than anybody thought, that a lot of people thought they were going to get, right? The other company got like 40% less than what people thought they were going to get. But we're throwing roses at one deal and we're burying the other one. And this guy's a business analyst? I mean, unless you're approaching it strictly from the perspective of which pile of money is bigger.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you can analyze it that way. And he's not the only one. But again, he was the most prominent one making that sort of argument. Okay? WWE came up short for the first time in their last, 4 or 5 deals. They came up significantly short in what they were expected to gain this time around. Ironically enough, off of their hottest period of that time. Okay? AEW is on their coldest period of their 5-year history. And they got way more than anybody thought they were going to get. So why are we throwing roses at one and burying the other? Rich, I don't understand that. Can you explain it to me?
I'd love to tell you. Yeah, he's somebody that I kind of figured would know a little bit better, because he also threw out, he kept saying the 20 years for the WWE deal. And again, I really, really want more people to look at that deal. And I know we were one of the few outlets when that deal got reported said, well, hold on a minute. This is not a 20-year deal. It could be a 20-year deal, but it could also be a 5-year deal. Like, you can't only, because every headline, and we talked about how very carefully crafted all the headlines were at that time. Netflix signs, 20-year, Netflix and WWE reach 20-year agreement for, what X amount of whatever dollars or whatever. And we're like, yeah, but that's if all the options get picked up. That's not how I wouldn't phrase a contract extension like that. I would probably look at more what's guaranteed. Let's look at the guaranteed money with the option to extend to and all this sort of money or whatever. But everybody else went with the 20 years, and that was the headline. And so for someone that, again, is analyzing the business to also say, oh, WWE got a 20-year deal with Netflix, so it shows that, they were obviously way more invested in WWE than WBD is invested in AEW. I fight back with, because that it's not a 20-year deal. It's a 5-year deal with options. And that to me is very necessary when analyzing that deal, because it really puts a different perspective on that deal. And we said that the spin was, at the time, report the 20 years and report the figure if all 20 years get picked up. That's what we're going to go with, and that's what we're going to send out to everybody. But once people started to kind of dig into the actual reporting and looked at what this deal actually, was made of, like we said, you could very safely and very reasonably say this is kind of a disappointing deal for WWE, given where they are, given how hot they are, given all these. But we said at the time what they were doing is essentially saying, you know what, we'll take a little bit less money, but you know what, we're out of this game now. We're not negotiating anything anymore. We're not getting to the table with these networks. We're not doing any of this sort of shit. Someone's just going to pay us, and we're going to produce the content, and we're wiping our hands of everything else. Great. That's all we want to do. We want to be a content delivery factory, and that's what we're going to be. We're not getting down and having meetings with all these different networks and all these streaming platforms and figuring out exclusivity and, oh, what about Max? And, oh, what about Disney Plus? No, fuck all that. Give us a bunch of money to be on one service, and we're good. And that's what they did. They cashed in on that. They said, we'll take a little bit less money, and you know what, Netflix, it's all you now, guys. For the next 5 years or the next 20 years or whatever, it's your guys' job to sell subscriptions and get people to watch our shit. It's our job to put content on your platform. That's it. That's our relationship now.
It's just funny how he acknowledges they come up short in investor expectations. He acknowledges they come up short in their own expectations. They get unceremoniously, if you don't want to call it booted by Fox, Fox said, all right, we're done here. Good luck in your future endeavors, which hurt their negotiating leverage because Fox wanted nothing to do with another deal with them, which certainly hurt the leverage in selling SmackDown. And again, we're throwing roses at that deal. And on the other hand, we're saying, I don't see a need for AEW to exist when WWE is doing so well. Buddy, they just signed they're just rumored to have signed a $500 million media rights deal. Take the L. Take the L. That's why they exist. $500 million. 4 years, $510 million, if the 170 figure is accurate, which this guy acknowledges is probably accurate. So on one hand, he's saying one company shouldn't even exist, which far exceeded what he thought that they could ever get, to the point where he's burying WBD for giving it to them, but he's throwing roses at the deal that came up short in every facet. I wouldn't want that guy handling my money. Okay? Listen, and when you dig a little deeper, this guy he used to be on the WWE investor calls, which means he's a WWE investor. Gee, I wonder why he has these opinions, Rich.
Right.
The guy had money invested in WWE and probably invest in TKO. Be a reasonable. Are they public? I don't even know if they're public. Didn't they cease being public?
They cease being public. TKO? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So he doesn't have money in him anymore, but he did. So it's not a shock that he framed these arguments the way that he did. Listen, I'm not trying to stick my beak in. It's none of my business. I'd never have that guy back on my show. I would never have that guy back on my show. But again, it's not my business. I've gone too far. I shouldn't be sticking my nose in other podcasts, but I mean, that was a horrid performance from that guy. Horrid. And it does, and I've seen other people kind of parrot that. It's just, I don't understand it. Okay? Yeah, you can say WWE got this enormous pile of money that makes them extremely profitable. That's true. It was a so-so deal, though, from the standpoint of relative to their own previous deals. This deal, if it ends up being true, it's way less total. It's a smaller pile of money, but it's an incredible accomplishment to get this level of raise when you're doing this kind of business, when all of your business metrics are down and they get this enormous raise. WWE's coming off their hottest period in the history of the company, and they lost their network show and didn't get what their investors were expecting them to get in their TV deal. What are we doing here? I mean, really?
He said it. It was very strange. I know a lot of people picked up on his, people don't need AEW anymore because WWE is good now. Quotes that he had.
$500 million.
Yeah, it's odd.
WBD feels like they need him. And listen, they're in bad shape too, and we all know they're desperate. But what did we also say when they lost the NBA? They're going to throw that money at other sports.
Yep.
And what have they done? The French Open. The Savannah Bananas, AEW. They're subleasing bowl
They started
games
licensing.
from ESPN.
Yeah, they license ESPN games. Hey, if we pay you for the games that you guys paid for, can we show them? And they're like, sure, whatever. And they're giving them like these mid-level Ole Miss versus this random ass college football that's not even that.
No. They have They have the Mountain. They have a Mountain West package on True TV. Okay, that's what you're talking about?
No. They did the thing where they licensed. What did they license from ESPN? What games did they license from ESPN? You remember how they did that thing where they're
subleasing some games from ESPN.
Yeah.
I think
they're not very good games though, if I
playoff
remember correctly, right?
No, they're playoff games. I think they're playoff games.
Oh, are they? Okay, well that's fine then. Okay, all right.
Yeah, hold on. I think they're the college football playoff. I think. You can look that up real quick, I guess. But the overall point here is they took all that NBA money that they're not spending now. And by the way, they're taking the NBA to court because they're going to get a payout. That's going to get settled out of court.
Yeah,
and
they'll make a cool couple million from that too. So it is first round playoff games, by the way. So I apologize.
Yeah,
first round playoff games.
So they're getting they're subleasing college football playoff games from ESPN. They got the French Open. They re-upped on AEW, and we said at the time that whiffing on the NBA, I thought that was an advantage for AEW.
Yes.
Because WBD was going to be flush with all of this. They had money that was going to be burning a hole in their pocket, and they're fucking using it.
Yeah. There was a lot of people going with oh my God, the carriage fees are going to, just plummet so that WBD is going to be destitute and whatever. And I was like, and you and I, who again follow this business and follow, it's not even just follow wrestling business. I think it's important too to follow the sports media business as well, which you and I both do a lot, is that WBD can't. They already signed a lot of fucking deals for a lot of sports networks, and they understand the value of live sports right now. That is why True TV is getting rebranded into a sports channel. That's why, that's TNT Sports. They're trying to grow that whole brand of TNT Sports because that's the only fucking thing that people keep cable for anymore is for sports. So TNT and WBD realized that, and they already signed a bunch of TV deals. So the idea that they lost the NBA and that, oh my God, their carriage fees are going to just plummet, so they're going to be destitute and out of money. Well, no, because they can't, because they already have enough fucking things already invested in the NCAA tournament, NASCAR, NHL, all this sort of stuff that you couldn't throw in the towel. So all you had to do was say, all right, we now have X amount of $1 million or billions of dollars left in our pocket. We're not going to spend all that billions of dollars that we're going to get from the NBA, but we could spend a lot of that elsewhere. Yeah. And that is where you get the French Open, subleasing the playoff games, AEW, all that sort of stuff.
They're piecemealing it. Yeah, they're doing the money ball. They're replacing Jason Giambi in the aggregate.
Right. They're going to get three guys for Jason Giambi's contract. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not going to do NBA numbers with any of these things, but you know what? The French Open's going to bring in different sets of eyeballs than there's going to be some crossing of the Venn diagram. I'm sure look, I'm a good example. I watched the French Open and I watched the NBA when it was on Turner, but there's going to be new viewers they get from the French Open. There's going to be new viewers they get from these college football playoff games that weren't, necessarily watching the NBA there. And they're going to try to piecemeal it together and replace Giambi in the aggregate. And that's their strategy. And we felt like that's what they were going to do. They weren't just going to say, well, we may as well throw in the towel and fold up the tent, guys. That's not what these people, that's not how it works.
They couldn't. And they couldn't either because they already have so much fucking money invested in these other sports properties that the idea that they were just going to go, well, fuck, NBA's gone, we're screwed. Like they couldn't do that. They can't just say, oh, hell, well, shucks. We had a good run, but it's over. Like, you have to keep spending that money and keep trying to fight to not only keep that carriage fee, but also keep your place as a prestige network and as a prestige, and yeah, like I said, they're having a lot of issues in WBD. Trust me, they're having a lot of problems in Warner Brothers Discovery, but the only result of this was going to be the only result of the NBA leaving WBD was just that they were going to have more money to spend on other properties.
That was the best news Tony Khan ever got when they lost the NBA. Again, is this a victory lap? I mean,
we've been pretty right. For years, for a couple years now, we've been pretty fucking right about this. So yeah, maybe it is a victory
Post should have us on. Post should bring us on
because we were right a lot.
Not this clown. Not this biased guy who had money invested in WWE. No, but yeah. So anyway, any other ways you want to slice and dice this, or you want to move on to something else?
No, I
guess
think I'm
the
good.
Next step would be.
I think I'm good.
We have to wait for it to become official. I guess Tony Khan saying 100%. But and then I guess we wait to see the next piece if they can sell this other media rights piece, this secondary piece. I mean, that's the other thing too that's amazing to me. I just talked about how they're having the worst business run of their 5-year history, and they've secured this media rights deal that even if you factor in escalators and the addition of Collision is like almost double of what they were getting this year. And it's way more than double if you just factor the original, 44 million AAV deal that they had. Despite the fact that they're doing the worst business in their 5-year history, they're getting this, what appears to be an excellent media rights deal. And they're also positioned to have a secondary media rights deal. You know, what if they were humming like they were in 2021? Could you imagine how big this deal would have been? So even the people who are knocking the deal are knocking it from, listen, I'll help you guys out. I doubt a lot of those kinds of people listen to us. They should, they'd be smarter. But I doubt a lot of them are listening. But if this gets clipped or put on, or we put it on YouTube or whatever, or people pay, here's some advice if you want to knock the AEW deal. They probably could have gotten double this if they were still doing the business they were doing in 2021, if you really look at it. If they were still doing 900,000 viewers and 0.34s in the demo, okay? And absolutely crushing their competition. And if Collision was still doing 480,000 viewers in the, 0.2s, and Rampage was still doing, 0.17s or whatever the fuck they were doing at one point, they probably could. The angle to knock this deal is that they got way less than they could have gotten if the deal came up 18 months ago.
Right.
And none of you dummies are even taking the proper approach to knocking the deal. You're taking all the wrong angles on it.
It should also be pointed out, too, and then we can move on, that the reason that Tony Khan, a lifelong wrestling fan and the son of a billionaire and a man of immense wealth himself, the reason he started AEW when he did was because of what we just got done talking about, the sports TV rights and how much money was involved in keeping sports on cable television, how important sports are to the foundation of TV, more so now than ever, more so now than even it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, which at that point was still very important. And now it is like of the utmost importance to TV and cable. The reason Tony Khan decided to start this company is because he saw what the landscape was, because he's a guy who's in the sports media, who's in the NFL, who's in the English Premier League, and understands what's going on and what's happening in sports. He understands sports media rights. He didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I'm going to start a wrestling company. I'm sure that gem of an idea was in his mind for a lot of time, but I think we always talked about the perfect storm that had to happen. It had to be the Bullet Club emerging, the Young Bucks emerging, Kenny Omega emerging, New Japan Pro Wrestling getting popular in America, WWE, falling in popularity, not really having a good second. Jericho being available, Moxley being available, all those sort of things had to happen. But more than all of that, he had to look at the media landscape and say, yeah, you know what? There's money to be made here. And that is these people that will get on and their stupid dumb podcasts and these stupid YouTube shows and just say a bunch of dumb shit about that they don't understand. They don't get this business. They don't understand why this guy's motivations or whatnot. The reason he started this company is because of what we just got done talking on sports media rights. He knew what the landscape was, and he knew now was the right time to do this. If he had done it 5 years later, it wouldn't have been the right time. If he did it 5 years after, it probably wouldn't have been the right time either. He said, now is the time to pounce and go for it, and I will have the ability to get paid for this property in the current landscape that exists. And that's exactly what's happened every single time.
He just did.
Yeah.
And it appears he just did. $500 million deal. $500 million deal. But listen, keep tweeting out no Millie. Go ahead. Right. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. It's I saw one today. 82 weeks in a row, under 1 million viewers. All right, $500 million TV deal. These people are all big WWE fans, and they didn't learn from WWE. This is exactly what happened with WWE when they were losing viewers. They didn't learn from the history of the own company that, with this tribalism shit that they support. It really is incredible.
We have to agree as a people to just fully 100. Once this deal gets signed and gets announced at whatever, we have to ignore these people. We have to just wholesale ignore these people. Stop sharing the tweets. Stop dunking on them. Block, ignore, mute. We cannot keep engaging with these people. We can't, because now the mask will be completely off and we'll know exactly what's all happening. You know what I mean? We'll know. There's just no point in engaging with these people anymore. Once that deal gets signed, we'll know that it's really just dumb shit, trolling, tribalism bullshit, and we all need to be better about engaging in it.
Well, that's not going to happen.
That's
Rich,
not.
But,
God damn it. God damn it. Damn.
Such a lack of understanding. I saw another one from. I saw one from a I'm not going to plug the account. it's a blue check mark, someone who occasionally breaks news or whatever, and is somewhat respected in certain circles. And it's a Chris Jericho hater, and they had tweeted something about Jericho opened the show. Let's see how bad he tanks the ratings. So the quarter hours.
Oh no!
And
I haven't looked at them, but I'm sure they're exactly what they always are. Right?
No. Listen, you don't even know where I'm going with this.
No.
So the quarter hours come out, and the guy has a follow-up tweet saying, what did I tell you? Chris Jericho, they got to get this guy. And then all the replies, I got to get this guy off TV because the Chris Jericho quarter hour, because it opened the show and it was a 25-minute match. The show opened at 782,000 viewers, and at the end of the match, the second quarter hour was at 724,000 viewers. And this was evidence, Rich, that Chris Jericho did in fact tank the ratings. Mm-hmm. And all the replies, they got to get this guy off their TV. Now, first of all, everybody knows that there's the every single week there's that drop in quarter hour 1 to quarter hour 2. This drop was not as steep as the usual drop, number one. And in the demo, the show opened at 282,000 viewers, and it went up in quarter hour 2 to 301,000 viewers.
And the match was like 19 minutes long, so the match definitely ran through the second.
24 minutes.
Yeah, definitely ran through the second.
24 minutes. And normally that quarter hour drops in the demo. So there's a whole theme that Jericho's match tanked the ratings and did terrible, when the reality is I'd put him in quarter hour 1 again next week if I was running the show. Look what he did. It increased viewership in the demo, and the drop from quarter 1 to quarter 2 wasn't as steep as it normally is. But Rich, again, this speaks to your point. The discourse is taken up by people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
There's a lot of people that think they know how to analyze the wrestling business, but they're fucking horrible at analyzing the wrestling business. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how to analyze the business. They don't understand the history of the business. They don't understand any of the business metrics that they're talking about. They don't understand the quarter hours that they're talking about. They don't understand the trends that they're talking about. They don't understand the history of media rights deals. They don't understand. They're masquerading as business analysts, and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And these people need to be ignored. Moving forward, they have to be ignored.
The tweet was, Chris Jericho's match loses 58,000 viewers. Source at WrestleNomics. Like Brandon said it.
Source at WrestleNomics.
Yeah, it said source at WrestleNomics or credit at WrestleNomics or whatever. It said, I'm paraphrasing, but it said credit at, it tagged WrestleNomics. And then that's intentionally deceptive, because what they're saying is Thurston is out there going, Chris Jericho lost 48,000 viewers. And when the reality is they just ripped it from the quarter hour report that he put out and then sourced him and to make it look like, see, it's all it's people who don't know what they're talking about, and it's people playing games. But I don't know. We told you all along they were going to get a good deal. We told you all along losing the NBA was a positive for AEW. We never got worked up about it. I mean, it just seemed elementary to me, and here we are. All right, now it has become an obnoxious victory lap, and it's probably time to move on.
All right, let's move on. So real quickly, I recapped this on Patreon. It's a free post, by the way, if you want to go flagship.patreon.com and read that post. But Janelle Grant's lawyers, or her legal team, which is Ann Callis, and now a new person that has joined the team, Kendra Barkoff-Lammy, I believe I have that correct. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it exactly. But she has joined the legal team as well. They did a press conference ahead of the release of the Netflix documentary, which is coming up next week, the Mr. McMahon Netflix documentary, which I will watch and I will review behind the paywall at flagshippatreon.com. You've said you're out, right? I think you said you were going to throw in the towel, or maybe you were going to watch an episode and decide, but I think it's
the
probably
McMahon doc.
Yeah.
No, you remember the deal was. The deal was you're going to handle it, and then I'm going to go off of what you have to say.
Okay. All right. So
I'll jump in if it's good.
I will watch it. I believe it's coming out Wednesday. Now, it's one of these ones where they're releasing all the episodes all at once, so I have no idea how I'm going to be able to watch all the episodes all in time. So I'll figure out a way, but you'll get a review behind the paywall, flagshippatreon.com. We'll talk about it. Don't worry.
Listen, an episode and a half in, you're going to know whether I'm going to like it or not.
Oh, yeah. So. Oh, yeah. And it's so far, the feedback I've heard from people is it's kind of... a lot of people seem to think that it's not going to be as rosy as you and I maybe thought it was going to be. But what my worry is,
I don't have really any. I'm McMahoned out. I don't have any.
Yeah, and that's
I
fair.
don't know what the fuck it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's a tricky spot for Simmons and the people. He's just the money behind it, but the people who, the people who are making the doc. I think it's the guy behind Tiger King.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm almost sympathetic to them because this has been a years-long project, and during the making of the project, they kind of you're forced to pivot because of now what's going on with the lawsuit and everything. So it's almost like whatever their original vision was had to be pivoted at least to some extent. And, you have to kind of rip it up and start all over. And I think even Simmons alluded to that. He's like, man, we started this thing and it was totally going one way, and now you can't ignore what's happening. You have to factor that in.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. I'm more interested to seeing how they cobbled all that together and how it came together in light of all of the recent stuff from this year versus being interested in Vince McMahon, because I'm not interested in Vince McMahon. And the other thing is, I feel like I can't be taught anything about Vince McMahon.
Right. Yeah.
You don't Vince McMahon explain me.
Yeah,
I know everything
about the guy. Yeah, unfortunately, I know way more about
there's-
Vince McMahon than I wish I ever did. But yeah.
Yeah, so there's nothing I'm going to learn or glean from this, not from these people. I'd be very surprised, right? There's a very small amount of people on this earth who can probably put together a Vince McMahon project where I might learn a thing or two or learn some new insights. There's maybe 3 people on the planet, and none of them are involved in this. But anyway, go ahead.
But so anyway, getting ahead of the documentary, which again we will cover at behind the paywall here at flagshippatreon.com. But they held a press conference just kind of to get ahead of it and talk about some stuff. So they didn't get into a ton of detail. It was only about 30 minutes. Again, I have a recap up at flagshippatreon.com, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here. But essentially, a lot of people asked, a lot of people that were invited to the press conference and were able to ask questions, essentially asked why they felt that it was not necessary for Grant to be a part of the documentary, because at first it came out that they were not a part of the documentary, and then it came out that they were indeed asked to be part of the documentary and passed on that. So a lot of people said, why did you feel it was worth passing on the documentary? And, there's like 4 or 5 different questions that kind of asked that same thing and it rephrased slightly differently. Callis was pretty consistent in what she said. She said, quote, Janelle needs to tell her story, her full story in the right way at the right time, and did not believe that the Netflix documentary was going to be that way. And now people asked, is it because of editing? Is it because of this, because of that? And Callis just kind of said that's not the right way to do it. She wants to tell her story, her full story in the right way at the right time. So she kept kind of reiterating that is why they passed on the documentary, because they want to be, when the time is right, they want to tell their story in totality and not just be a part of a documentary or any of that sort of stuff. So,
all right, so let me react to that.
Yeah.
Let me react to that point. So, first of all, good for them for inviting her. Okay, because early on, people thought, what? They didn't even invite her to participate? That's ridiculous. So good on them for at least trying to get her. But it would have been fucking insane to participate in this documentary.
While you're in ongoing litigation, yes.
Ongoing litigation. And as we know with these docs, you can talk to these people for like 4 hours, and they might use 4 minutes of what you had to say. And this is not a scenario with ongoing litigation where you want your thoughts chopped up and used in a way that a director has a vision for and all of this, as opposed to, there's no way. I mean, they had to invite her. If they hadn't invited her, that would have been awful. I mean, you can't, but I don't think they would have even expected her to accept. I mean, that would have been the worst lawyer advice in the history of lawyering if they allowed her to participate in this thing. But everyone handled it properly. She had to be invited, and they had to turn it down.
So that was a main part of this call. She also reiterated that, quote, Janelle is a victim and a survivor. She is not a WWE storyline. And Lamy, or Lamy, I don't know exactly how to pronounce her last name. She pleaded with people to remember that Grant is a survivor of control and abuse, and to keep that in mind when doing future reporting about this case. So it seemed like the two of them were a little, maybe annoyed's not the right word, but they were a little bit like, I don't know if people are reporting on this story with the amount of seriousness that they probably should. And maybe that was a little shot at WWE too, that maybe you should be a little bit more serious about this thing too, and not, just think it's kind of something that can be used in the background.
Maybe you shouldn't. well, not only that, maybe you shouldn't do storylines where Dominic Mysterio is showing text, text messages to his friends in the back in the same way that the lawsuit alleges Vince McMahon was showing text messages and pictures of Grant to everybody in the back, from wrestlers to stagehands to crew to everybody else. I mean, they did a storyline that essentially mirrored what Vince McMahon is accused of, which I thought was the most pompous and arrogant thing. And we were like the only people to really well, I shouldn't say we were the only ones. There were very few people who made a lot of noise about that. I mean, it was crazy to me. Whether it was intentional or not, they were mocking the lawsuit. And I'm being charitable by saying whether it was intentional or not.
Right. If it was unintentional, Jesus Christ, get your heads together. What are you guys thinking? If it was intentional, it's even more. It's just pompous, arrogance and yeah, it's just completely.
It's just they just feel they're untouchable.
Yeah. Well,
and I hope it comes back to bite them, because they're being sued too, and people keep forgetting that. Okay, they're in this lawsuit as well. WWE isn't just Vince. Okay. I hope that comes back to bite them, and that storyline is used as evidence that they aren't taking the situation seriously at best, and at worst are mocking it.
Right.
And at worst are flat out mocking it. And I hope a judge and a jury and anyone involved sees it that way. Because it's fucking gross what they did.
Yeah, it was terrible.
With that story.
But of course, nobody cared, and it just moved on, and we were just like, okay, I guess no one's going to care about this. Fine.
No, the counter argument was, Dom's going to be in on it, so he's not really being forced by whatever.
By Liv, yeah, by Liv, yeah.
By Liv. But that was never the point. It doesn't matter what the end point of the story is. Okay. In fact, the end point of the story is actually worse, because he's Grant in the scenario.
Yes.
Dom is Grant.
Yes.
Dom is Grant in this comp. So, by making it look similar, and then at the end he agreed, you're making it again, at best, you're inadvertently saying that Grant was okay with all of this. At worst, you're flat out mocking her.
It's one of the two. You have to pick one. It's one of the two, and you have to pick one.
Yeah, and there's only two choices here.
Right. Which is it? Oh my God!
So hopefully that's what they were saying. How she's not a storyline. I think
there was a little bit of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge of Callis.
I hope that's what they mean.
I think she's aware of what they've been doing and aware of that fact that again, Janelle is a victim and a survivor. She is not a WWE storyline, which I think was important there. Brandon Thurston, the aforementioned Brandon Thurston, asked if any other victims were coming forward in the case. Cal said that while an influx of people did reach out in the early days of the lawsuit, nobody has come forward recently, but does feel that there are more women that were abused or allegedly abused by McMahon due simply to the other NDAs that exist. Basically just, there's other NDAs, so I think there's probably something there. USA Today Sports, Jordan Mendoza, he asked if Callis' team had heard anything from WWE directly regarding the lawsuit. Callis said there was some outreach at the very beginning, but nothing since then. Paul Schott, who was a reporter with Bylines, multiple outlets across the Northeast, so we had some real reporters in here, which was nice. He asked specifically about the Southern District of New York's investigation into McMahon and their stay. She just said that their stay is until December, but had no updates about that. She did reiterate a little bit later, though, by saying that there is, quote, an active, non-public criminal investigation into McMahon. She has no idea what's possible in that or what's going to come because NBC Entertainment, it was Chloe Malas, I don't know how to pronounce her name, I'm sorry. She basically said, well, with the recent indictment of Sean Combs, is there something maybe brewing with the McMahon thing? And Callis said that it's possible, but, she can't say, but did say that there is, quote, an active, non-public criminal investigation into McMahon as well. And then one question that I think it got phrased very oddly, but it all kind of worked out if you know the history of this person and what happened. Lee Cole, who is the brother of Tom Cole, and look him up if you do not know who that is, who Tom Cole is, and how he might be related to this case in WWF. He said, he's been hearing from a lot of people, and people asked his brother the same thing as well. If you were truly being abused, why did you keep returning to work, and why did you keep a relationship with McMahon? What would Janelle Grant say in that situation if asked about that? And Callis said, thank you so much for that question. That's a very good way to phrase it. And just said that, Grant was coerced, human trafficked, and felt that she had no choice. She did state as well that WWE employees, several of them, knew of the relationship, and instead of taking it with care or action or anything like that, they instead met Grant allegedly with hostility. And that was laid out in the lawsuit as well, is that many people that knew basically just either turned their backs on it or said, you know what, whatever, or were just downright mean to her. So there you go. But I thought that was an important question too, coming especially from the brother of Tom Cole, who would know firsthand what it's like to have somebody who was being abused.
Was he representing a media outlet or something?
Lee Cole was what the hell was he? It was like Wrestling with the Devil, I guess, was his. I don't know how he got the invite. I mean, I said
there's a plant. I mean, they wanted him to ask a question because he's Tom Cole's brother.
Yeah. But I mean,
that's. I mean, they probably. It's no coincidence Thurston got called on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that he did, but they've been in contact with them, and so a lot of this is we know how these things work. So, because I was just curious, I wasn't aware that but he probably just drummed up some outlet or something, and they just wanted to make sure that, because they want people talking about Tom Cole,
right.
So
exactly. Well, what I did right here is encouraging people to look up Tom Cole if they don't know, if the name doesn't ring a bell immediately, go look up Tom Cole and see what you can. And
now we've got thousands and thousands of listeners, and whatever percentage of them are going to Google Tom Cole if they don't know who he is, and that's the whole point of having Lee Cole ask a question. So. And look, I think they're just trying to get ahead of the doc because they might not be entirely sure what the content is.
Yeah, exactly.
In this way they get ahead of it, and they are part of the news cycle when the doc hits, because so many of the articles on the doc now are going to mention that this presser was held today.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And that's why that this was strategic. Obviously, everything with lawyers is, and in case that, and especially in the case that the doc series is a puff piece, because they don't know, what if it turns out to be very, advantageous towards Vince's reputation or whatever. And that this way they've gotten ahead of it, and they made sure that people are still aware that, hey, by the way, we're still suing this guy and and his former company, and sue everybody, and there's an ongoing investigation, and he might be indicted at some point as well. And he's a bad dude, and we're just reminding you of that before you watch this doc and crack open your beverage of choice to enjoy a little WWE nostalgia. We just want to remind you of an inconvenient truth.
So there you go. So again, if you want more about that, I have a write-up over there at flagshippatreon.com, free to read as well, so you can jump in there and give that a read. All right, so let's get into the actual wrestling reviews that we have this week. I think we got to start with CMLL, right? I think CMLL, MLW.
Yes.
No, we got to start
do.
with the Anniversario. Come on, man. 91st Anniversary for CMLL. Big story out of this show, of course, is probably going to be the main event and the semi-main event. So the semi-main event was the mask versus mask match, the four-way match, which we'll get to in a second. The main event was the best 2 out of 3 falls match with Mystico and Chris Jericho. Now, that's really a tale of two matches in a lot of ways, for sure. How do you want to tackle this Anniversario? Because do we start with the mask match? Do we start with the main event? What do we do? Because I think it really is... It really speaks to the show, which had, an amazing... I thought semi-main event was amazing. I thought the mass match was just absolutely phenomenal, emotional, great match. And then the main event, which a lot of people saw as just tremendously disappointing, weird main event to the 91st Anniversary show for CMLL. But how do you want to tackle the show? And then we can kind of run it down.
So first of all, very quickly, and this was discussed last week with Cubs, super no vacancy, full house sellout. So They packed the building. There wasn't one seat available in the days leading up to the show. So a massive success as CMLL stays hot. CMLL stays hot. WWE is not the only hot wrestling promotion, and hasn't been for the last year or so. CMLL has also been very hot, and I'm sure they're turning a profit, right? We didn't bring them up before, but I'd be very surprised if they're not turning a profit these days. But Jericho was putrid. There's no other way around it. I mean, this was one of the worst main event, big match performances on a major league, major show that I've seen in some time. He was flat out putrid. He wasn't bad. He wasn't awful. He wasn't underwhelming. He wasn't disappointing. He was putrid. He was terrible. I mean, that first La Mystica, where And then they went back to it because
they tried it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they did it the first time, and first of all, I'm shocked that I know it wasn't the full on, but I was surprised that Jericho, that Mystico, I guess because it's Jericho and he's a huge star and everything, allowed someone to get out of it. But then they did the spot with the code breaker counter, which was a great spot. I thought the timing on that was great with the code breaker. But then, they get up and then the finish was super abrupt. He just gives them another standing, into the La Mystica. And again, it looked worse the second time than it looked the first time.
As the crowd boos, as the crowd's booing.
Because they know it's awful.
Because they know it's bad. They're not booing because Mystico has Jericho in his move because they fucking love Mystico. They're booing because it looked horrible and it looked like shit and they couldn't believe that they were watching it.
Yeah, he gives them the really bad La Mystica, and then Jericho puts him in the Lion Tamer. He escapes the Lion Tamer. I think he might have even attempted to give him 3. I think Jericho countered. Yeah, he countered the second one with the code breaker.
Yes. Yeah.
And the third one was just the third attempt, the one that ended the match. And I mean, it just felt like it came out of nowhere too. It almost felt like Jericho was like, let's just get out of here because this isn't working. And he just beat him with it. And the match was just, the best. This is the best way I can describe this match. This was a AAA match on a CMLL show.
Yes, exactly. That's and then the post-show angle, I literally wrote in my note, what am I watching, AAA? Yeah, it was not good. It was not good. Now, I will say that I think people, I don't know where you were at with this match. A lot of people thought this match was absolutely horrible. I don't know if it was, I thought it was more not good than it was bad. Does that make sense?
I think Chris Jericho was so abysmal that the match was horrible.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's fair. I thought Mystico worked his ass off at least trying to make it something.
I want to be clear. He's not responsible.
Yeah, no. So I thought he worked enough, and I think it had enough decent structure to it to make it more on the not good side than the bad side. But the finish, there's no way to defend the last couple of minutes of that match, which were just absolutely atrocious.
No. Look. They had ideas. Jericho wins the first fall with whatever he calls his Boston Crab variation. Yeah. Again, would it be the Lion Tamer in this instance?
Walls of Jericho, the Lion Tamer, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but
he's wearing the Lucha. He's
Lionheart.
He was wearing
he's Lionheart, so we'll call it the Lion Tamer. Yeah,
no, Correza de Leon or whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Whatever. He put him in the high angle Boston Crab and won the first fall.
And won the match. And won the match. I watched AEW Collision on Saturday and won the match. So ding, ding, ding.
I don't know what do you think happened there?
I have no idea.
What do you think happened there?
No idea. I watched the show and then I watched Collision and Tony Schiavone's like, and then Chris Jericho was at CMLL's 91st Anniversary show and he defeated Mystico. And I see Mystico tap it out and ding, ding, ding. And I'm like, just staring at my TV like, what did I just, hold on a sec. And I had it on DVR, thankfully. Because my brain, it was like, I was kind of half watching and half not. And I was like, whoa, hold on. What? So I rewound it to make sure I had it right. And yeah, it's like Chris Jericho's got Mystico in the Lion Tamer. Mystico taps out and Tony Schiavone goes, then Chris Jericho was victorious in the main event of CMLL's 91st Anniversary show. And I was like, no, he wasn't. Mystico won that match.
Do you think someone fucked up? I don't think they would intentionally. All right, if this was WWE while Vince was running things, I could buy that they would lie.
They would just say, fuck it, nobody cares, we'll lie, and no one's going to call us on it.
No one cares, they'll never know. If this was a territory in the 70s or 80s, I would totally buy that they would do this on purpose.
Right. No one's going to know. No one's going to find out. We could just lie and say this happened. No one's going to care.
Say he won. We could run the footage of him winning the fall. No one's going to know any wiser. I don't think AEW would do that.
No.
I don't think Tony Khan would endorse that. I don't think Jericho would endorse that. I think Tony Khan knows that people know who won the match. So this had to just be somebody fourth on the fucking totem pole fucking up, right? I mean, there's
It
no
has
other
to be
explanation for
because
this.
they also fucked it up on social media too. They also put out a tweet that said Chris Jericho defeated
Shocking.
Mystico. So, the always
Crack
good
AEW
Right,
social media
always,
team.
always on top of things, always correct. AEW social media team fucked up. So I don't know if it trickled out from there, where then the media, the whoever put this video together, whether it's the same person or they just looked at the tweet and said, "Okay, we got it. Here we go." I have no idea. Now they could have retconned it in a way, but you don't want to do this either. You could have retconned it in Jericho saying, "Yeah, I lied about that. What happened, and I made Tony run the tape." You could do that, but that's
Still
bad.
heat on the company.
There's heat on the
I
company. You make Tony look like an idiot. You never want your announcers to look like idiots. That's a classic Pro Wrestling 101 thing, is that you want the announcers and the company to feel like they have, you can, whatever you want to do in between the wrestlers and all that sort of stuff, but the announcers should always be the voice of reason. The announcers should always be telling people the truth. The company should always be telling people the truth. And the heel, Chris Jericho could come out on Dynamite and say, "I went to Arena Mexico and I defeated Mystico," or whatever. But what that should do is people go, "Boo, no, you didn't," and Excalibur could say, "Oh, that's not true. Mystico defeated him 2 out of 3 falls," or whatever. That you could do that. That's fine, but that's not what they did here. The company said the wrong thing. So I think the company got something else wrong about the CMLL show. So I don't know. It's sloppy shop. That's what it is. It's just a sloppy shop that nobody caught. They put a corrected video out later. They put a corrected tweet out later. So that lets me know that it was not nefarious. It was nothing like that. It was just somebody fucked up and nobody noticed until it aired live on TNT to the entire world. And enough people had to have brought it up and said, "Well, hold on a minute. That's not exactly what happened." But go back to
I
the
don't
match.
understand, even if someone makes a mistake, how it ends up. It's how does it?
Somebody
get to TV?
should have
Someone
seen
has
that.
to
Yes.
know
Yes.
that he didn't win the match. I just a mess. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was pretty terrible. Jericho was worse than he was in that awful. Remember that awful Eddie Kingston match?
Oh yeah.
That Jericho. Yeah, he was worse than that. I mean, he looked like he was afraid to take the face first bump on the La Mysticas. And he wanted to go down as gentle as possible. Maybe because, you always hear how about the rings are harder there. The CMLL rings are harder than the American rings. And maybe at his age, he didn't want it. But look, you wanted to be in the main event of this show. You got to take the guy's move. Okay? He's going to win with that move in that building. That's just how it goes. And, if you're afraid to take the move, it's just terrible. You can excuse the one, but then it happened again.
Yeah.
So it was very clear he just didn't want to take that bump. Like Mystico in MLW, he won one of the matches with, because he won the Opera Cup. Spoiler alert for the next segment. But he won the first match with a crucifix over, who did he wrestle in the first one? Bad Dude Tito, right?
Bad Dude Tito, yeah.
But you're not, it's like you could do that. He could win with that in MLW, especially against a bigger guy. That was like the story, he caught him. He's got to win with the La Mystica in that building in the main event of the Anniversary show. So Jericho was that was as putrid as a performance as you'll ever see. I don't know. I just thought it was the absolute shits. And then they do the angle with Orange Cassidy, who was presented as a heel earlier in the night.
He was a Rudo earlier in the night, comes out to save the babyface. The last image of CMLL's 91st anniversary celebration is Orange Cassidy, getting one up on Chris Jericho ahead of their match on AEW Dynamite. Yeah. It was like, what?
It's a build to Dynamite match.
What?
Yeah. That 1% of the people in that building are going to watch.
What? That's where I said, am I watching AAA? Like, what is happening here? Why is
it was it was a AAA match on a CMLL show. That's exactly what it was. So the less said now, the better.
Absolutely.
As we move on to the
please.
semi-main event. Now, the semi-main event, you already said the match was great, but we'll talk about it. I'm just glad that they're giving the shove here to Hechicero. Now, he did get injured, and I haven't seen an update.
Yeah, he hurt his bicep. Now, I know I think he tore it, but I believe he's still wrestling, because of course Hechicero would tear a bicep and still wrestle. Yeah, he wrestles. Okay, so he made an appearance. I don't know if he's wrestled since then. I think he's made a couple of appearances. I don't know if he's actually wrestled since then, but we'll see.
I hope he doesn't lose any momentum that he would have gotten off of this because, we talk about it all the time. He's really a mid-card guy. For years, they wouldn't even put him on shows in Arena Mexico very often. He was always, like Tomohiro Ishii, he was always over with the non-Mexican fans of the promotion more than the promotion's own fans. Mm-hmm. Similar to Ishii with the Americans and the British fans loving Ishii and seeing him as a main eventer, where in Japan he's not a main eventer in New Japan except in Korakuen Hall where he's enormously popular because those are hardcore smart fans in Korakuen Hall.
Right.
So they finally decide to push him. He takes Euphoria's mask, which is a huge deal, and
he did actually wrestle. So to update, he did actually wrestle. So
he did wrestle. Okay,
he wrestled a couple days ago. This is from Lucha Blog. This is from the 16th. So an Arena Mexico show on the 16th. Hechicero had his bad arm heavily wrapped, but wrestled without issue here, and wrestled the previous night on a Guadalajara show without noticeable issue as well. CMLL would not have him wrestling with a bicep torn enough to need surgery, so I presume it's a minor issue if it's one at all. So that points that maybe things are okay, and he's just going to have to be a little careful with it for a little while, but maybe avoid a disaster. So, okay. Sorry.
Well, good. And hopefully hopefully he doesn't feel like he has to power through a serious injury because this is the biggest push of his life.
Yeah.
I mean, you hope that's not the case. If he has to heal, you hope he goes and heals, and you hope that they don't forget about it. And the CMLL could, it's not out the realm of possibility that a guy could be out for a number of months and then they just hand wave whatever they were going to do with them. But from that standpoint, I thought that it was a very, very pleasing booking from that standpoint where you get Esfinge out of there early. Valiente, who, as Cubs noted last week, can't really go anymore. You get him out of there a couple minutes later. And you not only have Hechicero get the big win and hopefully lead to a big push, you called back to that original feud from last year where Euphoria and Hechicero and they kind of got away from it for a while, and then they heated it back up before this match. So there was history here. This wasn't just two random guys at the end of this match. There was a turn. There was a turn angle involved with these two, where Hechicero got thrown out of their group or whatever. So he took the mask of someone who had been an on-again, off-again rival of his over the last however long. I forget when they did the angle. I wrote about it behind the paywall last year. So from that standpoint, well booked, and the right two guys at the end, the right guy to take the mask off of Euphoria for a number of different reasons. It's his rival, and it's the guy you want to push out of the people that were in the match. What good would it do to have Valiente take the mask, or Mid-Carter Esfinge? That doesn't do anything for you. You do it against the guy he was. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I did see a lot of people that were confused about this, and I think you and Cubs addressed it last week, and I feel like it's a good idea to address this now, too, because we're putting this match over, so people might watch this now if they weren't planning on it. If you're wondering, it's a four-way match, and the final two guys, their masks are up for grabs. Now, you would ask, well, shouldn't that be the two guys that got pinned should then have to fight to find out who loses their mask or whatever? That's not how they do it. They do it in the sense that this is such a big moment, and it is so important to keep your mask and to take someone else's mask that you're going to want to be one of the last two guys, because this is a huge moment to be in Arena Mexico, in a super no vacancy Arena Mexico, and defeat somebody and take their mask, and that is a star-making performance. It's a star
on an anniversary show,
right? On the anniversary show, so it's really the best dumb jock energy bullshit ever, and I love it because it's like I want to put my mask on the line because it's going to mean more to me to take that guy's mask. Right. It's going to mean more to. I am more than willing to put this on the line because the moment and the benefits of me beating you and taking your mask outweigh. So you get the geeks out of there at the beginning. And I'm just calling them geeks for the purposes of this or whatever. You get those guys out of there and you go with the rivalry match. You go with the two guys. That's why you do that. That's not why you don't have somebody that nobody cares about. You have the rivalry guys. You have Hechicero who's getting that push. You have those guys there because the idea here is that Hechicero gains so much by taking Euphoria's mask that he doesn't want to escape the match. It's not about escaping the match. It's about getting your moment of glory. It's about getting that big time spot on the anniversary in Arena Mexico in front of a super no vacancy. So I know a lot of people that were just dropping into CMLL were confused about that and why you'd want to do that. But it's just like ultimate fucking machismo. You know what I mean? It's ultimate dumb jock energy of being like, nah, man. I want to take that guy's mask. I'll stay to the main event. I'll put this thing on the line. That's fine. That's what it's all about. So people are confused why you get eliminated and your mask isn't on the line. That's why. It's all about machismo and being in that spot in the top, in the top billing in Arena Mexico.
Yeah, in kayfabe, you want to be the one to take someone's mask, especially your rival. I still think the psychology is a little backwards, but it comes down to preference, I guess.
If you just think of it as a bunch of dumb jock idiots, it makes sense. Especially with a guy like a Hechicero. Especially with these two guys, it makes sense that you'd want to hang in there to take your rival's mask, like you said. Mask.
Yeah. The idea is, but for both of these guys, was I want it to come down to me and him. Forget these other two because I don't like this guy and I want to take his fucking mask, And the reality is, you want to be either the guy taking the mask or losing the mask, for non-kayfabe reasons. Because when you lose your mask, you're treated like a hero anyway. You get the big announcement and your family and the tears and your opponent, you hug it out with the opponent.
You can put on the shoulders. You can put on the shoulders.
Yeah, who gets treated like the conquering hero? Usually the guy who loses the mask. He gets put up on the shoulders. Right. It's a big moment. It's a huge emotional moment. So you want to be either the guy who took it or you want to be the guy who lost it. What you don't want to be is the geek eliminated first, right? Because you don't get remembered. People have a hard time remembering that Esfinge was in this match, but they're going to remember that Hechicero took Euphoria's mask. And, Euphoria, I guess. So he looked like a middle-aged pro wrestler. He had a little receipt. He had the Gene Simmons hairline and I guess you never know what they're going to look like, but you kind of have.
He looked exactly like how he thought he was going to look. He thought he looked exactly how he thought he was going to look. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I think the one historically that looked exactly what I thought he was going to look like was Ultimo Guerrero.
Oh, yeah, especially even the nose. You even knew that guy had like a little pig nose or whatever.
That's what that guy. You just knew he was going to look like that.
Right.
Okay. He kind of looked like his mask.
He did. He did.
The others, you're kind of like, what's going to happen here?
Remember Dr. Wagner? Remember when he unveiled? Everyone's like, why'd you wear a mask? What are you doing? Dr. Wagner Jr. when he took that mask off?
Sexy grandpa.
Yeah, everyone's like, what the fuck? What were you doing wearing a mask? You're so sexy. God damn it. What are you doing? What a waste.
He grew out the gray beard and he got all jacked on the steroids. Yeah. And then he was like, you had Suzuki was murder grandpa, and for a while, Dr. Wagner Jr. was sexy grandpa, and they were going at the same time. Someone should have booked him in a match on a WrestleMania weekend, with that as the
sexy grandpa,
sexy grandpa versus murder grandpa, Suzuki versus so and it'll benefit him for a while too. Euphoria now that he lost the mask. But
that was a good match, though. I mean, these guys, once it got down to the final two, man, that bell rang and they just they just immediately started chopping at each other. And especially knowing that Hechicero's got a hurt bicep, and you could tell he was kind of favoring it, but still working it, as much as he could, because he knew he was going to have to work it a little bit. So he was going to have to take some arm drags. He was going to have to do, his little, springboard things he was going to do. Euphoria doing, tries to go for the top rope power bomb and stuff. Like it was good. I mean, they really beat the hell out of each other, and the crowd was going nuts for this as well. So I really, really, as much as the main event is to be avoided, you absolutely everybody has to watch this semi-main event. Now, I don't think it's going to be in like my match of the year or anything like that, but I think it's just an important.
It'll be in a lot of people's.
It should. It will, and it probably should.
I think that it had immediate heat. There's just a different kind of heat for a mask match.
Oh yeah,
and when it got to the final two, I did think Euphoria was kicking so much ass that the finish was going to be obvious. Not that when it came down to those two, you didn't think that Euphoria wasn't going to be the one to lose anyway. But
right. Really did you ever buy that it was Hechicero was going to lose?
No, and especially not when I saw. Okay, so Hechicero took that sick rail bump where he did the dive or whatever, and he hit like his thighs hit the rail, and he took the back, and then he bumped on the floor. Do you know what I'm talking about? That sick bump he took. That was the turning point, and then Euphoria just beat the fucking shit out of him for like the next 10 minutes or whatever. And it's like, all right, well, this is not even. They didn't opt to do the dramatic taking turns with near falls or anything like that. They just had Euphoria beat him down and Hechicero, come back in the end and put him away with the wacky submission, or the way he locked him up, whatever that, And, so on top of it would have been a pretty big upset anyway. It would have, the way they structured it was like, okay, well, this is just a matter of time because Euphoria is dominating this man and they're going to have it where Hechicero wins in the end. But it was a great match. I mean, I'm not knocking it.
Yeah,
Sometimes
there was
fine.
a lot of good back and forth too, but it was, the match was structured in a basic way, like you could say, but they did it in the best way possible because once Hechicero, once fans started realizing that Hechicero was working his way back, they started going nuts because this crowd was very, very into Hechicero here and was ready for this guy to do that win. So, the final couple of minutes of the match when the fans could sense that, oh my God, we're getting there. We're getting to the final here. We're going to see someone's going to unmask. This is all going to come to an end. They got real, real hot. But those guys worked their asses off in the final, too. I mean, once that bell rang, they had a whole separate match all to themselves, and it really, really, I thought even over-delivered from what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be good, but it was better than I thought.
The heat always helps, and the emotion always helps. And I would have preferred, obviously, a singles match. I mean, if it was going to come down to these two, why didn't you just build a match with these two?
Yeah,
right.
That was Cubs' whole argument, wasn't it? If I remember correctly, too, that it was just kind of interesting that they didn't just they include the other two guys, and then those other two guys, and that's kind of why I say it's sort of two matches. Do you remember anything about the first part of the match with Valiente and
no, and no one's going to.
I remember nothing about that part.
And that's how and no one's going to. It's just, it was kind of pointless from that standpoint. To build it, maybe they thought there might have been a hook with, Valiente possibly losing his mask, being the longtime veteran and everything, and maybe that was part of it. But yeah, it basically they ended up having a singles match anyway because they went a decent amount of time when it came down to the final two. But let's see, the match was 36:05, and the first two falls went about 25 minutes. They went 11 minutes. I mean, you could have had them go 25 minutes and just not had the other two guys involved. But it's a great match regardless, and a clear highlight of the show. I didn't think it was a great show. I thought it was I enjoyed the show. I found it very easy to watch. It was like almost a 4-hour show. The proverbial show that flew by until we got to the main event, which was awful. But nothing else really stood out on the rest of the show. It's like there was a bunch of pleasant matches until we got to the mask match. And then that was a great match. And then the main event was just a spectacle, but it was awful. It was just irredeemably.
It was a thing. Yeah, it was a thing. I think I'm not as harsh on the main event as you are, but I want to reiterate that I did not think it was good. I just think it was more not good than it was bad, but it was...
Yeah,
if you want to call it horrific or horrendous, I would not argue. It was pretty.
Jericho was putrid. To me, it was a 1-star match.
It was fun watching Mystico wrestle like a literal sack of flour in the ring there. But Jericho couldn't move or bend or breathe or run or do anything. So that definitely hurt it.
This was such a far cry from when Jericho would go to New Japan and have those awesome matches.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, it was
such a far cry. Now we're many years removed. And Jericho has his moments in AEW where he's awful too. I just brought up that Eddie Kingston match that everybody probably remembers.
The Adam Cole match.
I mean, he's what is he, 54? I mean, he's gonna have matches where he's terrible. He was fine on Dynamite against Orange Cassidy. Just utterly unremarkable in either way. He wasn't particularly great, but he wasn't bad either. He was fine. Even without the qualifier of he's in his fucking mid-50s. This match, he was atrocious. And to me, it took the whole match down. Do you want to circle to the top now and talk about the top down?
Yeah, let's talk about the rest of the show. Because I kind of agree in totality with you. The rest of the show felt very breezy. Not a whole lot of
breezy.
I don't have a whole lot of notes about a lot of the other parts of the show because it was just kind of like, here's a bunch of guys and they're wrestling and doing some things. I have some notes about a couple of the singles matches, but it was a breezy watch is probably the best way I can put it.
Well, we've got some other stuff to get to anyway, so that's probably a good thing. Futuro, Hombre Bala Jr., and Max Star defeat Magia Blanca, Magnus, and Ruhido. My boys Magnus and Ruhido here.
Yeah.
Look, these guys came out and they knew that they were going one fall, and they didn't fuck around. There were some great dives in this match. There was great energy in this match. These guys had 7-8 minutes, and they utilized every second of it. And I thought that the Futuro team, and Max Star and Futuro in particular, they really made it a point. Now it was interesting because at the end of this match, I don't know if you caught this. Futuro,
yeah, I know exactly.
Blew the dive.
Yeah, he did.
He blew the dive, but it looked like a power bomb. It was supposed to be a dive into a Rana, I guess. But it looked like he landed in the powerbomb position, and wisely they sold it that way. But I think that was going to be part of the finish to take the other heel out, right? And then to do the finish in the ring. But it was a blown dive that actually ended up looking kind of cool because it looked like he got caught and got power bombs. But it was 100% a botched dive. But outside of that, I thought everybody looked great, worked hard, and did the most that they could with the time they had.
Yeah, no, it was a perfect opener. They didn't overstay its welcome. Like you said, just kind of got in there, did the one fall, did a bunch of fucking dives, got the crowd excited about it. Yeah, you can't ask for much more out of the opener, and those guys all looked pretty solid. DeFuturo, I feel bad for him because I thought he was really good throughout the match, but then that botch people will remember that a little bit. But I think they if you weren't hyper focused and you aren't taking notes like we are, you might not have even noticed.
That's what I mean. Yeah. It kind of looked seamless because it ended up looking like a power bomb.
Yeah.
Even though the idea was for him to take the other guy out, he said he got taken out. Sometimes you need that little bit of grittiness in a match, though, right? Like
sure.
Sometimes that works. All right, so the next 6-man, the next, let's get everybody on the show 6-man. This one was 2 out of 3 falls. Soberano Jr., Angel de Oro, and Diego Roja. They defeat Neon Star Jr. and Templario. Now, this I thought was very similar to the opener, except it was best of 3. Everybody got their shit in, but it did have more heat. And I think the explanation would be that Soberano Jr. and Templario were in this match.
Yeah.
Whereas the opener was, a bunch of mid-card guys that are popular and work Arena Mexico all the time, and people know who they are. It wasn't like they were nobodies that you sometimes get in an Arena Mexico opener. Well, they'll bring in guys that don't typically work the building. But this had 2 guys who have clearly been elevated over the last year in Soberano and Templario. So I think that explains why it had more heat.
Yeah, I would agree that's probably the case, and obviously I'm a huge Soberano fan, and I love Templario too. So this one felt a little bit bigger, and it felt like these guys. I don't know. The vibe that I got was the crowd felt that these guys were, or probably should have been in a bigger position than just being thrown out here in the second from the bottom match or whatever.
Yeah. They just weren't figured into the top.
Yeah, they just weren't. Yeah, and then there was a multitude of reasons why, but they felt like these are still our guys. So the crowd was super hot for this match, and these guys all worked pretty hard too to make this feel like, hey, you know what? We're all guys that by this time next year we want to be in tippy top spots. Like Soberano and Templario were working their asses off. Really felt to me like they were saying, hey, look, next year I want to be in that fucking main event. Like, I want to be the top guy, and I felt that from both those guys. And yeah, that made the match feel a little bit better because it felt, you had your couple guys that were just kind of thrown in here, your Neons and your Star Juniors or whatever, but it did feel like the star power of this match was Soberano and Templario. And I would hope that by this time next year, those guys are figured in much, much bigger than they are, or they were on this show. But I like this match a lot. Because I like everybody involved in it, too. It was really good stuff.
Yeah, good dives, good flying. You got Neon and Star Jr. flying all over the place. I will say one other difference with the opener is that Los Depredadores trio, they aren't super dynamic, right? Magnus, Ruhido, and Magia Blanca, but they have really cool double and triple team moves. Like, you feel like Magnus and Ruhido are a tag team because they have all this shit that they do that's very much in sync with each other. They have these cool double team moves they've come up with. The 3 of them work things out. So slightly different style too, where those guys are a little more grounded, and there were good dives in both matches. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like, and plus this one was best of 3 falls and had, an extra 10 minutes to do shit too. But yeah, 2 very good matches. you get exactly what you were expecting to get out of both of them to
For sure.
to open up the
Yeah,
show.
definitely.
Titan and Mascara Dorada, the final of this Copa tournament. I thought it was a little underwhelming. I was expecting better out of these two.
I liked it, but not. Yeah, I get why people were disappointed. I think I liked it because I don't know if I came in with a ton of expectations, but I did see most other people thought that it was a little underwhelming, and I get that.
Okay, yeah, I was disappointed too. I think my bar was set a little higher. Now Mascara Dorada, I might be the low man on him. It's not that I don't think he has a ton of potential, and I don't think that he's someone who could be great. He doesn't land with me like everyone else seems to think he's the next. I'm not going to make comparisons, but the next big thing in Lucha.
I thought Titan was
I don't know.
a multitudes better than Dorada in this match too, and
because Titan is better than Mascara.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't know if that is going to be considered a hot take, but Mascara Dorada is 22 years old, and Titan is great. Titan broke out last year on a wider scale because he had the great year in New Japan, remember? Mm-hmm. And he's great. I mean, he's a fully formed pro wrestler, and I don't think Mascara Dorada is yet. Now, Mascara Dorada has a higher ceiling. I just don't necessarily think it's a lock that he gets there like a lot of other people. A lot of people think he's there already. I'll probably get some heat for saying Titan's better than him. I think Titan's better than him. I would take Soberano Jr. over him. I don't know about Templario. Templario's a little hit and miss sometimes. Just comparing him to other guys. Atlantis Jr. has way more charisma than Mascara Dorada does at this point. Okay? He's not as dynamic, but I think he has more charisma, and I think that's why he's a little higher on the card right now. Just trying to compare him to contemporaries. Some guys that have risen up at the similar time that he has in the company. Again, I don't want to come out like I'm knocking him. I'm just not as high as other people are, and it's funny you say Titan was better here. I just think it's because Titan's the better wrestler.
Yeah, it's a good conclusion to come to, I'm sure.
All right, so Titan wins, and then we had the women's title match, which I wish I could have bet on this. We all saw the title change coming.
Yeah.
This didn't do much for me.
I thought this was bad. I think people are not. I think the main event is clouding. The main event is worse. Don't get me wrong. The main event was worse.
Yeah.
This was bad, and I don't see a lot of people calling it as bad as these were two different people on two different pages. This entire match. It was slow. It was plotting. Anytime they tried to do lucha stuff, Willow wasn't really prepared for that. When they wanted to do just let's slug it out, and they did that a couple times, it looked okay. But then there were times where Zeuxis was like, all right, I'm going to do my little Hurricane Rana thing. And then like Willow would do like the slowest Hurricane Rana sell you've ever seen. And they just seemed on two different pages. It was a very weird match, and I could not wait for it to end. It was one of those matches that it was just excruciating to watch because I'm watching two people that just cannot get on the same page, can't figure out what to do, can't seem to get to a middle ground, have two different wrestling styles and vibes or whatever, and I just wanted it to end. I just wanted it to fucking end, and Zeuxis hit a really bad Spanish fly and got the win, and I was like, thank fucking God that was over because I thought this was brutal. I thought it was a really bad match.
Yeah. I think it was good. I thought it was a 2-star match, disappointing. But here's the thing. I was late on the Stephanie Vakir train because these other CMLL women are the shits. And I would often skip the matches because Zeuxis stinks.
She sucks. Yeah,
she's not any good. Vakir was carrying the division. When they would get on these Arena Mexico shows, these women's match, they were awful to the point where with my limited time, I just started like slapping fast forward or skipping them, because they were always bad. So I'm not as surprised. You probably haven't seen as much of her as I have, right? So it's like, I wasn't surprised that she looked the way she did. Willow, I'm not, it's hard to be down. Willow's having a great year. And Willow has become a legitimate, she's become a star.
She had one of my favorite women's matches of the year just a couple of days ago. So it was, it was hard to kind of bury her because I was like, well, I just saw her have a fucking phenomenal match. So I'm assuming this is more on Zeuxis than it is on Willow. And I usually like Willow a lot too.
So it's one person who I always see is the shits and another person who's always pretty damn good.
Right. I wonder who's the
but I mean, I don't know. We sound like this is like the main event where I think you hated this more than I did, but I hated the main event more than you did. All right, so then that leaves us with
one of the all-time. This is one of my all-time. What do these guys talk about teams? I cannot wait for you to say these names. Go ahead.
This is I'm going to call this the Cubs fan disrespect of MLW match here, because he disrespected them in the preview last week, because it was Team Mexico versus Team Promotions that we work with. And he only noted AEW and New Japan, but I got on him, Rich. I
heard it, and I was glad. I was listening. I was still gone. I was listening, pumping my fist on a plane, saying, "Damn right, Joe. Damn right." ML Dub.
To be fair, Cubs with the mea culpa, he said, "You're right. That's the MLW World Champion that I'm disrespecting."
Thank
there.
you.
So Atlantis Jr., Ultimo Guerrero, and Volador Jr. defeat Orange Cassidy, Rocky Romero, and Satoshi Kojima. So that's the team Rich is referring to. Yeah, I don't know. I don't imagine, and again, Orange Cassidy working heel. They did an angle earlier in the show where Bill and Chris Jericho jumped him in the interview area. And then, so he was babyface. Then he comes out to wrestle and he's a heel. And then he comes out for the save at the end and he's babyface again. So
Triple A. For some reason, this was Triple A.
Triple A like.
I don't know what was going on.
This match was fun. It's do I think you have to go out of your way to find it? I don't. Do I think it was a fun match that told a story? Volador pins Rocky to win it in the third fall. And, they've been at odds for over a year now, right? With Rocky being the, at one point, the top Rudo in the entire company and the top heel in Arena Mexico. And I regret to inform you that Rocky Romero was canceled. He did come out wearing a sombrero and an exaggerated mustache, mocking the Mexican culture, Rich. So the wokes aren't going to like that.
The
one,
wokes
Rich,
are not going to like that. No. He looked like a regular Pepe Gonzalez out there. You can't do that. Can't do Pepe Gonzalez.
Different culture, can't judge. Different culture. Couldn't pull that one off in America. But
Rodriguez, isn't it Pepe Rodriguez? What's the little mouse? What's his name?
Pepe Rodriguez. Speedy Gonzalez?
Maybe I'm thinking of Speedy Gonzalez. Who's Pepe Rodriguez? What the fuck am I talking about?
Pepe Rodriguez.
What the fuck am I talking about?
Hey, I have no idea. Pepe Rodriguez.
I don't know who I'm thinking of. I'm off the.
We did a whole bit on Speedy Gonzalez a couple months ago.
Yeah, we went through all the canceled Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Yeah. Who am I thinking of?
Yeah.
I think Pepe. Maybe I mixed. I think in my head I made Pepe Le Pew and Speedy Gonzalez, and I smashed them together. You also can't do Pepe Le Pew. You can't do Pepe Le Pew either, which we discovered.
We did a whole Pepe Le Pew thing. Yeah. We had the whole conversation.
Very canceled.
Yeah, you can.
Very canceled Pepe Le Pew.
Very canceled. You conflated Pepe Le Pew and Speedy Gonzalez.
Yeah, I apologize.
That's
what
you did.
Yes, but thank you for getting me on the right path there.
You're tugging your collar over there. Yeah.
His name's called Speedy Gonzalez too.
I'm trying to imagine now I'm trying to picture a mashup of Pepe Le Pew. And Speedy Gonzalez.
Like a little crossover episode, a little, I don't know what they would do.
They'd be a little horny. He'd be a little horny Mexican mouse.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I was thinking if you brought both of them in the same cartoon and tried to make them make sense, but they were very different. They had different, motivations and stances on the world. Are you really breaking
down these cartoon characters?
Let's please move on. Yeah, please move on.
I don't think either of them are Hanna-Barbera cartoons either.
No?
Pepe. No, they're Looney Tunes. They're both Looney Tunes.
Oh, okay. Oh shit.
Right? They're Looney Tune, not Hanna-Barbera. See, if this were Marvel and DC, you'd be in big trouble.
People would be like, I feel like, fake fan, getting all mad at me, getting on.
Are there Looney Tune and Hanna-Barbera
universes? Yeah, I don't know.
Universe psycho fans like there are for Marvel and DC.
I hope there's some Hanna-Barbera guy that's just really pissed that we don't know all about Johnny Quest or whatever. Yeah, they're like, fucking come on.
Yeah. Or
get your shit together.
We're gonna find out if there's a Looney Tune hardcore. They're gonna be mad that you claim that these men were.
Yeah, right.
Pepe Le Pew and Speedy Gonzalez. These men, I called them. They're going to be mad that you claim that these men were Hanna-Barbera universe cartoons. They weren't popping up as special guests on Scooby-Doo. Okay, that you couldn't do that because they are Looney Tunes. Now they could pop up with Bugs Bunny. Correct. I'm sure Bugs Bunny has done some. I'm sure Bugs Bunny has worked Pepe Le Pew at some point, right?
I'd imagine there was a crossover. Yeah, there had to be a Bugs Pepe. Let's see.
Yeah, they must have worked each other at some point. So I would think that because Bugs Bunny, he works with everyone. You know, he works with Daffy Duck, obviously, Elmer Fudd. You got your Porky Pigs. You got, he works with them all. So I'm sure at some point he crossed paths. What's the chicken hawk and the guy that talks like Robert Fuller?
Foghorn Leghorn. Foghorn Leghorn.
Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah.
Again, Looney Tunes. And, I'm sure Bugs has crossed paths with Foghorn Leghorn. The secret is when I do the Ron Fuller impersonation, I'm really doing Foghorn Leghorn.
You're just doing Foghorn Leghorn, yeah.
I'm pulling back the curtain here, but the Ron Fuller that I do is actually Foghorn Leghorn. Very divisive, that impression. Some people love it. They love when Ron Fuller does a cameo on the show. Other people think it's cringe. I will tell you that it's not. Listen, you never know when Ron Fuller is going to show up.
Yeah, we don't control that. Ron Fuller just shows up,
He shows up. I don't know. I can't help it when Ron Fuller shows up. Ron Fuller shows up when he feels it's appropriate to show up. The other funny thing is I think Robert Fuller sounds more like Foghorn Leghorn than Ron Fuller does.
The best part about your Fuller's thing is that you say you're doing Ron Fuller, but you're actually doing Robert Fuller.
Yeah, I'm definitely got them mixed up. Like,
you probably don't know. Yeah, but it's fine. Who cares? Nobody's going to call you out.
Ron Fuller just talks like a normal Southern guy.
Right. Robert Fuller as Tennessee Lee. You do Robert Fuller as Tennessee Lee. / but it's whatever.
As Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. So, but those are all Looney Tunes characters.
Correct. Yeah, not Hanna-Barbera. I apologize.
Yeah, with Underdog and the like.
Underdog and the like.
What was the dog? What's the other dog? The one with the droopy eyes and the droopy ears. What the fuck is that dog?
Oh, man.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. What the fuck is that one's name? Yeah.
The low energy dog. I think he's supposed to be a basset hound or something.
Yeah. What is that?
The low energy fucking basset hound. That's what I'm gonna Google.
Yeah. What the fuck was that guy's name?
Let's see if that produces a result. Low energy.
Yeah, I'm not coming up with anything in my head. Yeah.
Basset hound. Oh, now my keyboard's fucking with me.
This must be. Yeah, we got to figure this out.
All right, let's see. Low energy.
I'm on a Dogs of Hanna-Barbera page here. Let's see if I can.
Hanna-Barbera dog. No, you know what it came up with? Mumbly. That's not the one I'm talking about.
No, it's not Mumbly. I know you're not talking about Mumbly.
Droopy.
Oh, his name just literally Droopy? Okay, there you go.
His name's literally Droopy, which we should have come up with, I think. Droopy.
You said, what's the dog with the droopy eyes? And it's Droopy, apparently. So.
Yeah, the low energy.
Yeah, he's a basset hound for sure, right?
Something like he's got to be that, or a fucking beagle or something. I don't know.
Droopy. Yeah, I'm gonna watch some of these after this show. I miss Hanna-Barbera.
A lot of dogs in the Hanna-Barbera.
There was
a lot of dogs.
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo, Droopy, Underdog. What was the other one I just said? Fucking Mumpy.
Yeah,
Mumpy or whatever.
There was the Muttley, which was from the Wacky Races. Remember the
True
Dick Dastardly,
Races, yeah.
Dick Dastardly's dog, the one where he like had that weird laugh all the time.
Yeah,
he's like
a lot of
Muttley. Dogs. The dog would make the funny laugh. Yeah,
those races, like you'd score. It was like the AWA Team Challenge.
It made no sense.
Score points.
Yeah, it made no fucking sense. Yeah,
I would watch that as a kid. I'd watch it as a kid and get mad that they weren't adhering to the rules. And the
scoring was a disaster. Yeah, the scoring was
such a mess.
Yeah, whoever Huckleberry Hound is there too, so they got a lot. Yeah, a lot of dogs.
Much like the Team Challenge series, the scoring was just all over the place and another disaster. It's like why is Buck Zumhoff scoring 40 points for winning a battle royal?
Right.
Or I think that was Jake the Milkman Milliman who won the battle royal to win the whole thing. It's like, all the captains had left the company before it even ended. Like Slaughter was already WWF champion, and Slaughter's Marauders were then being led by Baron von Raschke. I think
it was not great. Yeah, it was not great for old AWA. Very similar
Larry
to what
Zbyszko was.
And then Vince Russo would later do that, later gain inspiration with that one Bound for Glory, where like everyone had different match, numbers. Like Samoa Joe only did like 6 matches, but like James Storm had like 14 matches. It made no fucking sense. And the final score was like,
no sense.
All right, James Storm has 67 points, and Samoa Joe has 42. And it's like, what are we doing? What is this?
Yeah, because randomly a match would be worth like 25 points instead of 2 points.
Right. What are we doing?
And people still listen to that guy when he talks about wrestling. They still listen to that guy.
2011, Bobby Roode won with 59 points. He had 16 matches. Gunner had 20 matches, only scored 42 points. James Storm had 40 points, scoring 13. Apparently it was submission win got you 10 points, a pinfall victory got you 7, a countout victory got you 5, a disqualification victory got you 3, a draw got you 2 points, and a disqualification would cost you 10 points.
Got all that?
Yep. The top 4 wrestlers face each other in the tournament finals at September's No Surrender, where Bully Ray defeated James Storm via disqualification, while Bobby Roode defeated Gunner via submission, giving both 52 points and setting up a tiebreaker match between the two. And then tiebreaker, Roode defeated Bully Ray to win the tournament. So yeah, Samoa Joe had negative 10 points, by the way. He had negative 10 points with 10 matches.
Yeah.
And then a few, like 4 guys got did not finishes because they got hurt in the midway through the tournament or pulled out or I forget what, but dumb.
You want to do a deep dive behind the paywall on that year's Bound for Glory series?
No.
Watch every match?
Not really. I had the idea, actually. There's a half-finished last year. I think I had this idea when Vince Russo got into WCW. He did a 64-man WCW World Title Tournament. And I thought, you know what? A lot of these matches are like 2 minutes. I'm just going to watch them all. We'll do a show where I watch every single match in the story. I got like halfway through, and I was like, I can't. I can't. It's horrible.
Yeah, people think bad wrestling is fun to review.
It's not. Especially when it's like a 2-minute match. It's like, Medusa faces Evan Courageous. And I'm like, what do you want me to say? I don't know. Fuck off. Like, what am I going to say? It's like, because then my idea was like, it'd be a fun gimmick because I'm going to have 64 episodes. Like, I'll have an episode for every single match. I'm like, all right, today we're going to talk about, this. But then like a match would just end in like a minute with no contest, and I'd be like, I don't fucking know or care what's happening here. This is ridiculous. So I gave up. Yeah. So
it's impossible.
It's stupid. It was dumb. The episodes were getting worse, and I was like, no one's going to listen to this. This is terrible audio. No one wants to hear this. It's just terrible. So,
God bless the Days of Thunder. God bless the Days of Thunder podcast.
Yeah, they're in for some tough. They're in a tough run here.
Yeah. So that was the anniversary show. Let's quickly talk about Kaito Kiyomiya and Ryohei Oiwa, and then I think we got to push MLW to the overrun because we're up against it.
Yeah, fine. We got a lot. I got a lot to say about MLW. So
yeah, so let's squeeze Noah in here at the last 5 or 10 minutes that we have. So Kaito Kiyomiya defeats Ryohei Oiwa. Oiwa, this was known ahead of time that this was going to be his last match with Noah. They did a really good video pre-tape video at the start of the show, kind of going over the history between these two, how they were a tag team and then obviously now rivals and some of the moments that they've had since Oiwa had been with the promotion. And, it was really cool. And then they have the match and they have this really good match. I can't call it a great match. But they had this really good match.
Yeah, those guys had better. I want to say my overall thought was that they've definitely had better matches. I love the draw. I love a few of the other things. This was just okay, I thought.
Well, I had some problems with it, but we'll get to that. But then they have the match and Kiyomiya goes over, and I'm thinking to myself, Noah has done a better job building up a guy who they knew that was going back to New Japan as a rival to Kiyomiya than they have with any of their own guys.
Yeah.
Kiyomiya has his rivalries, don't get me wrong, with Kano and whoever else. But this one feels like it has more weight and gravitas to it than anything that Noah has done with their own people.
It's the best story they've told. It's the best story they've told in years. This guy comes in as an outsider. He joins in a tag team as kind of the jobber with the guy who's the champion, the top star or whatever.
We met in New Japan when he was there for the G1.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And so little by little they start kind of, this is guy, hey, you're my, all right, kid, follow me and I'll take you to the top. This is my protege or whatever. And then little by little they start getting pretty good. Oiwa was starting to get better and starting to get and then they, they go their separate ways and then they start fighting. And Oiwa's got, he's right there with Kiyomiya. And had he stayed in this company, there's a real chance that he have, Oiwa,
generational, they could be rivals.
Right. Oiwa would beat him and prove that he's, he's better than his mentor. He's as good as his mentor. And then you have a long title. Like, you would have a really, really good story here. But unfortunately, of course, he's going to leave and he's going to go back to New Japan Pro Wrestling. But it's
about
a
the
great
same
story.
age. It would have worked out perfect. They're the same, about the same age. And, if Noah would have put this kind of effort into like their own guys, maybe they'd be doing better. It's just, they set up this career-long rivalry that just doesn't have a chance to play out unless Kaito Kiyomiya leaves the company and goes to New Japan now. So bizarre from that standpoint. Also bizarre from the standpoint that Noah basically booked a New Japan young boy on the same level as their ace. Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't that encapsulate for all? Look, the story was good.
Yeah.
In a bubble. But at the end of the day, they booked their ace to basically be even with a New Japan young boy. That's crazy to me.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Now,
and it's different than like the Great Muta coming over for an excursion in WCW or whatever. And or whenever he came. But we're using this character and then he's going to go back to Japan and no one's going to really know of the relationship that he had in a smaller world. Like you talked about with AEW, lying about the CMLL result. You can't do that anymore. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't do that today.
No.
But this is in Japan. This is a fellow company, your direct competition.
Your direct competition, your top and direct competition. With a larger parent company, right? Like their parent company is bigger than Bushi Road.
Yes,
they have their production budget, all those things. They took that company's young boy and booked him on the level of their ace. That's crazy. New Japan would never do that.
No. And what's funny about this is when this match was over, I'm thinking, oh man, Oiwa should like. You know what should happen is, Zack Sabre Jr. should win the title and Oiwa comes out and challenges him right away. Like, that's what you should do. But I'm thinking, New Japan's maybe not going to use this guy as like a tippy top guy. Like, Noah's handed them a tippy top guy if they wanted it. They've handed him a main event level guy. But he's probably just going to be the X for like TMDK. He's probably just going to be a guy like in the middle because they're going to try to tell their own story of him moving up the ladder. But like because of the way that Noah's pushed him, New Japan could push him as a top guy if they wanted to, but I think it's going to be even more funny when they don't. And it's like, wow, the guy that's just like the X for TMDK or a guy that's just like, one of the this or whatever is like right there neck and neck with Noah's top guy, like the generational talent in Noah. Not even just Noah's top guy right now, but like the generational guy that Noah's making their company.
Undisputed ace.
Right, the undisputed ace.
And not only that, he didn't even beat him definitively in the middle with his finish. He like caught him in a clutch pin combination. And Oiwa was like, you got me. You know what I mean? Like he didn't even beat him with like a definitive center of the ring, clean as a sheet finisher. Okay.
I'll leave the territory type of finish. You're like, boom, I beat you. You're done. Our rivalry is over.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Leave my company. This is my company.
Right. Okay. So the finish is, Oiwa goes for like a gut wrench move that looked like it was going to be a Dr. Bomb, and they botched it. Like he dropped it, right? And time stood still for a second. Like Oiwa didn't know what to do. Kiyomiya wisely just stayed on the mat face down and sold getting dropped. But Oiwa didn't kind of know what to do. So they kind of got their bearings back in the next 30 to 60 seconds, and they just redid the spot, right? So it's very clear that's what they were going for the first time. So he hits him with the Dr. Bomb. A few minutes later, he hits him, or a few moments later, he hits him with the German, but he can't hold it. He can't hold the German. That wasn't a botch. That was like part of the plan.
Yeah.
So he hits him with the German, but can't hold it for the pin. Goes for a second German, figuring, all right, if I hold him this time, I'll beat him. Right? But then Kiyomiya, to escape, stuck his hands down between his legs, tripped Oiwa, and then did like this wacky pin clutch combination.
Yeah. Kind of clutched him. Yeah, I got a clutch for the win.
But Oiwa's shoulder was up. when the referee was counting and he had to put his own shoulder down, the finish was a mess. Okay. They had good ideas. The execution was a mess. The rest of the match was fine, and they worked hard. And I was very interested in the finish and how they were going to tell the story of Kiyomiya beating him. It's a shame that the finish didn't go off exactly as planned in a couple of different ways. And then they did the whole thing at the end afterwards, the post-match where Kiyomiya endorsed him and all of that. A challenger came out and they basically told him, hit the bricks. This isn't time for this. Right?
Right.
I forget who it was. It was Masa
Kiyomiya. Yeah. He's like, they're like, yeah, get out of here. All right, fine.
Yeah, and he basically was like, no, this isn't the time or place. So he throws him out of the ring, not literally, but figuratively, tells him to hit the bricks. And then he endorses Oiwa and they raise each other's hands and all that. And it's a great scene. It's just so weird because this is a New Japan young boy. And it's just so Noah to nail a story under these circumstances, you know, and push a guy who was a jobber from the competition, who you know, and I think Oiwa has all the potential in the world. I think he's going to rocket right past a lot of the New Japan guys that we talk about ad nauseum as who are struggling to move up. I think he has a great look. I think he has a star presence. He could go in the ring. You know, they'll probably slow play him like they slow play everyone else. I do think he'll be the X. It makes too much sense. But I guess we'll find out. Or did we find out already? Did that happen? No, that didn't happen.
I don't think it happened yet. Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, just typical Noah. You know, it's just even when they win, they lose. But now you watched Body Guy Manabu Soya win the national title.
Did. Hell yeah, I did.
From Oka Sasaki. Look, I like that they're giving Oka Sasaki a real chance. He's something different.
Yeah,
he's got a ways to go.
He's okay.
Yeah, he's all right. He's got a ways to go, though. You know, he's green. There's no other way to put it. Body Guy Manabu Soya, you know, he deserves a little shove here.
How fun was this match in Korakuen Hall? This crowd wanted so badly for Soya to win. I felt bad for this kid here. You know, he's like 31, I think. How old is Sasaki? He's 34. He's not a kid. But he was coming into it. I mean, this crowd was just like, nah, man, we all want Manabu Soya to win this match. And just the chance for Soya. And as he's rising up or whatever. Oh, man, you know, I love him some Manabu Soya. Now that he's a body guy, I love him even more. And this was an incredible moment here, winning this title here in Korakuen Hall. And the crowd, just 100% of this crowd, all in Manabu Soya, him doing the power moves or whatever. It wasn't a great match until the final stretch, but really enjoyed Manabu Soya getting that win and a hot Korakuen Hall crowd. Very ready for my man, one half of Get Wild. Manabu Soya finally getting that big Noah title. Hey, look, you know what? They talked about, I was listening on English commentary, and they're like, yeah, it's unbelievable. He went out with an elbow injury, and he came back in the best shape of his life. And it's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't. Like, it's unreasonable that like a normal human being would, you know, have an elbow injury and then come back with, you know, 55 pounds of pure muscle. But you know what? My man Manabu Soya did. And I don't want to question how it happened or whatever. I just know it happened, and I'm all in on Body Guy Manabu Soya. So
I got a point of contention. It's not like he's lean muscle. Like he's not, you know what he looks like? He kind of looks like, he kind of resembles like he reminds me of Tomoaki Hanma a little bit, like when Hanma was in better shape and was a little younger.
Absolutely shredded.
Yeah, and like with the yellow tights and everything, and yeah,
the new hair. Like I love this midlife crisis or whatever the fuck is happening, but I'm all for it. Yeah, you know, he got a new sports car too. You know, he's just rolling up with a sports car that he probably can't afford or whatever. I love it. I'm all in.
Sports car. Yeah, like great power Uti, with the sports car. I did watch the opener, Yu Owada versus Daiki Orashima. Orashima was making his debut. Came out in I think he had red tights, you know, the plain red tights. You know, Yu Owada, he's been the resident young boy here, and you know he gets a chance to beat up on somebody and beat him. You know, because this is this guy's debut. I'm gonna say this thing I say every time. Okay. I wish they always wrestled like this. These young boy matches are so good. They wrestle with intensity. They wrestle with fire. They're not trying to do character bullshit. You know, you could tell that there's There's probably a trainer waiting behind the curtain with a fucking kendo stick if they don't do everything right. So, you know, they're out there, you know, just execution is everything, you know, because you got Masa Kitamiya in the back taping up his fist if he's not happy with your performance. Everything about it, except for the implied abuse that I'm putting forth here, is just so great when these young boys wrestle each other. And I really wish there was more of this, like on the rest of these cards. These guys get away from just wrestling a lot of the time. And, you know, Japan wasn't always like that. The actual wrestling used to be a bigger part of things. You know, I'm not trying to sound like old guy, but modern Puro, they really do get away from it quicker than they used to. But this Daiki Odashima, it looks like he'll be a junior ultimately. And like a lot of young boys, he had a lot of fire. You could tell he was excited to be there. His chest was all welted up, and they were like, you know, this is his debut, but, you know, earlier today in the warm-ups, they were really putting a beating on him. So it was like, wow, you know, it was like, wow. Yeah, I did watch the opener. I didn't watch any of the tags, though. Very quickly before we start the overrun, because last week when I was putting the shows together, it kind of got caught where I had already recorded everything and I didn't have time to talk about it. Micah Taylor passed away. And Rich, you may recall, he was a very early guest on this show.
Yeah.
Micah Taylor. Mm-hmm. We were looking for someone to come on and discuss the Florida Championship, or the Deep South Wrestling, the Bill DeMott controversy that was happening at the time. Mm-hmm. That's how long this show's been going on. The Bill DeMott.
Think about that. I have the write up here. Joe and Rich welcome Micah Taylor, former WWE developmental talent. This is December 19th, 2012. Think about how long ago that is. Yeah, and current independent pro wrestler, to talk about his career, past and present. The interview touches on his unorthodox training in Hawaii, his eventual move to Kentucky and the OVW territory, his developmental contract with World Wrestling Entertainment, and his tumultuous relationship with Deep South Wrestling's Bill DeMott. The guys discuss the Kevin Matthews Bill DeMott Twitter controversy involving the nude stink face, why he felt DeMott sabotaged his career and the career of others, and much more insight into the world of WWE developmental. So yeah, that is it feels like 400 years ago when I read that. The Kevin Matthews Bill DeMott Twitter controversy feels like that happened 45 years ago.
And we tried to book Kevin Matthews to come on and talk about it, but he politely declined. So he may have suggested Micah Taylor.
I think that's how the connection came. Yes. I think he said, you know what? I don't really want to say anything. I'm not in a position to say anything. I don't want to get in any more trouble, but I know this guy's got some thoughts about Bill DeMott, so ask him. And so we said, sure.
He may have been the connection. So anyway, he was 47 or 48. And the last I saw, the family hadn't released any kind of cause of death or anything like that. So I don't know how he passed away so young, but he was a guest on our show. He was part of that developmental era where, you know, Kevin Matthews, Kenny Omega, Matt Cardona, all that generation of guys. Brian Myers, trying to think who else would have been there. MVP would have been there at that time, and I actually have a little anecdote to pass along. So, you know, that was kind of his developmental era. He never got called up. I'm sure he worked a bunch of dark matches and stuff, but he never got the call. He worked both as Mike Taylor in developmental and also Micah Taylor, but on the indies, he was almost always Micah Taylor. I saw him wrestle a couple of times in Texas because Jax Dane would book him for his San Antonio indie, because Jax Dane was also in WWE developmental at that time.
Yeah.
So that's where that was the connection there. And people might remember Jax Dane from New Japan a decade ago, or from NWA Today. So I saw Michael. I not only saw Micah Taylor wrestle a few times, he remembered me. He remembered doing our show, and I remember introducing myself to him, and he had instant recall of who I was. And he gave me so much time. We just chatted probably for 20, 30 minutes. He introduced me to MVP because they had rode to the show together. And every time I saw Micah Taylor, which was only a handful of times, he remembered me, and he would make a point to come over and shake my hand and talk to me. He was the nicest guy. I mean, I know people always say this when somebody passes away, but this guy, even if you read the testimonials from, you know, his friends in the business last week when he passed, they all note that he was just such a nice and giving man. And the few times that I met him, that is totally the impression I got. I mean, we were nobodies, and he did our show, and for him to even remember me, that he did the stupid show, and then to remember me whenever he would see me, and he would go out of his way to introduce me to people. Like we would just be talking and conversating at shows or after shows, and he was trying to help me network, so he would call people over. He'd be like, "Oh, MVP, come here. I want you to meet this guy, Joe Lanza. Come here, come meet this guy." Like because he was trying to help us, He appreciated that we had him on, and he liked me, and he would always introduce me to these wrestlers, to the point of embarrassment, because I knew that a lot of these guys didn't give a shit, but they didn't want to meet me. They didn't want this stupid podcaster shaking their they didn't want to be bothered.
This fucking Mark asshole that is back here, talking to us.
And I would pick up on that energy, and a couple of I'll be honest, like when he introduced me to MVP, it was awkward because it was very obvious MVP wanted nothing to do with this introduction. You know what I mean? I can't blame him. I'm not blaming MVP for that. Like, why does he want to meet me? He didn't know who the fuck I am. He was minding his business, playing with his phone, waiting for his friend to stop talking to me so they can hit the road. And then he decides to introduce us because he's like, yeah, these guys have a great podcast.
Oh,
and like,
the worst. Telling MVP these fucking marks have a podcast.
But he meant well. He
totally
meant well.
But yeah, I know MVP looks up from his phone and thought his fucking Mark ass with his podcast. Yeah, okay. Hi.
Yeah, and he would introduce me to anyone that walked by that he knew. He'd be like, "Oh, hey, come meet this guy. Yeah, this is Joe Lanza." And it was like almost to the point of uncomfortable, but I don't mean it in a negative way. It was very charming, and he just wanted to help me network.
Yeah.
And he would always ask me, "Oh, how's the show doing? How's the site doing?" He was an exceedingly nice man. And when I saw that he passed away, it hit me in a weird spot, because I probably haven't talked to the guy in a decade. Okay. But I remember those 2 or 3 brief conversations, and I remember him coming on the show, and I know he went on Wife Swap. His wife, Tracy Taylor, is a wrestler.
Yeah.
I don't know how much she still works today, but she works Shimmer and some of the other, indies back then. I don't know how. And his daughter got into the business. I don't know if you know that, but his daughter works now. And I know he and Tracy Taylor, they did the Wife Swap show, but I don't think they did the ABC version. I think they did the version that got moved to streaming, but I'm not 100% on that, but I know that they did the show. And I guess that was an interesting hook, like this pro wrestling family, Wife Swap always had those kind of gimmicks. I think Mick Foley did Wife Swap, didn't he? Mick Foley did an episode of Wife Swap, maybe.
I don't remember.
But anyway, I just wanted to make sure, because last week it kind of got, when I do the solo shows, I record them in pieces during the course of the week, and it just got lost, and I wanted to make sure that I talked about him a little bit, because he was someone who was great to us, and he was someone who was great to me, and he was a genuinely nice man to me when he didn't have to be. So I was sad to hear that he passed away. And, and a sneaky good wrestler too, I wouldn't, I don't have to say this if I didn't think he was any good, but you could tell that he was like one of those good veteran hands that the indies would like to bring in to work with their guys and everything. And just a sad story. Kunaki Kobayashi passed away last week too, and I didn't get a chance to talk about that. 80s New Japan and All Japan guy. He a rival of 2 different versions of Tiger Mask. Really, he was a rival of the original Tiger Mask, and he was also a rival of the Misawa Tiger Mask as well. I think he wrestled both the versions of the Tiger Mask. Meat and potatoes pro wrestler, kicks and strikes, very good pro wrestler. What I didn't know about him is that he was still involved with New Japan right to the end, running the dojo. I don't think he was training in the dojo, but I think he literally ran the dojo, like the business end of the dojo. Mm-hmm. I think he maintained the building and ran the literal building of the dojo. I don't think he was a trainer, but I wasn't even aware that he was still with New Japan. Now, he did do the Rambo a few years ago. And I remember when he came out, a lot of people didn't recognize him, and Twitter was like, who the fuck is this guy? Because, he's from he from an era where a lot of people weren't even born yet, let alone fans of New Japan at that time. But he did do a Rambo, I think, a few years ago, and
2017. 2017, he was in that one.
It was that long ago already.
I think
Holy
so.
shit.
Yeah. I'm double checking to see if he was in one since then, but I know for a fact he was in the 2017 one. Let me double check if he was in any others more recently as I click. No, 2017, Wrestle Kingdom 11. Billy Gunn, Bone Soldier, Michael Elgin, Cheeseburger, Hiro Saito, Scott Norton. Was that the original? That was the original Rambo, right? Scott Norton and all those guys. Yeah, I think that was the original.
No,
one.
they had to do them early. They did them earlier than that.
I don't think so. I think that was the first one. I'll double check, but I remember Scott Norton being a big part of. I thought the first Rambo.
He got a big pop in one of them. I think they did them earlier than that. Maybe they might not have. I don't know. Anyway, those are two guys who passed away who I would have talked about them last week. It's just I taped it in pieces. I recorded the show in pieces, and by the time it was ready to all be edited together, it was too late in the game. I actually meant to bring up Kunaki Kobayashi when I did the New Japan segment, but I just whiffed on it. So that one is my fault. Micah Taylor, I didn't find out about until the whole show was like formatted and sent to Andrew. I couldn't do that to him. So I wasn't going to add another segment, but I just made it a point that I wanted to get it in this week. And I almost forgot again. Almost forgot again until I looked at my phone.
I'm glad we brought that up. Yeah, because it does suck. And he was a very early guest. And I remember that as well, because that was in our early days when to kind of build this whole thing up, we got interviews with wrestlers. And that's kind of what I don't know if we envisioned that being all we were ever going to do, but I think that was the way that we thought was the best way forward to actually grow. And by the way, when we started this thing, like the idea of like two people getting on and talking about wrestling for a couple of hours, that a lot of it was interviews. A lot of it was like if you were going to have a quote unquote podcast, it was like you were interviewing somebody, we're talking to somebody. So I think we kind of in one breath felt that we had to do it that way, but I also think that we thought that was the best way to grow. And I remember that. Yeah, I'm almost positive it was Kevin Matthews that gave us Micah's information and said, hey, contact this guy because he'll talk to you.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that was great about a lot of our early interviews was everyone, and we talked about this every single time, and I'm sure it was the case with Micah as well. Every interview started, the wrestler had their guard up. Here we go. Here's another fucking a bunch of idiot wrestling fans are going to ask me a bunch of idiot dumb questions or whatever. And I think with Micah very quickly on, he realized, oh, these guys know their shit. These guys are cool. And that ended up being a great conversation because he was an open book. He didn't care. He knew that he never envisioned being hired by WWE ever again. He never envisioned that he was ever going to be signed by developmental. He didn't want to be signed. He had that kind of Kenny Omega thing where he's like, my time was so fucking horrible there. I don't give a fuck. I'm not going back there. I'm never working with that guy ever again. So I think when he realized, oh, these guys know their shit and they're going to let me just say whatever the hell I want, even if it's, negative or anti towards WWE or build them out or whatever, cool, I can get this out because no one's really ever let me say this in a public forum. So I think it ended up being I'm sure it's lost of time. I have no idea if you can still find that episode. I probably have it on some laptop somewhere because I don't think it's anywhere online anymore. If I can find it, I'll do what I can. But no, I'm sure. I remember that being a very, very good conversation because very early on, he let his guard down and realized, oh, these guys are cool, and just we had a really, really good conversation about developmental and just about what went on in WWE developmental, and that was at a time where it was starting the controversy of what's going on with WWE developmental, and of course, it got completely blown up a couple of years later after that, and reworked.
Yeah, people forget it was that Kevin Matthews Twitter feud with Bill DeMott that kind of was in the heart of that.
Yeah.
That exposed it to a lot of people. Now, Micah Taylor was in the tag team with Tony Santarelli. That was the closest I think he came to getting called up at the High Impact tag team towards the end of the run where they were trading the Deep South tag titles with let me see if I could find it. But he ultimately never got called up. That was right around when they were doing WWE CW. So like your Mike Knox's and Derek Neekirk's eventually got the call. He probably would have too if they would have kept him around a little longer. But he did Japan. I mean, he worked 0-1 as Sandy Beach. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
but,
Sandy Beach. I love it gimmick. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bunch of different wrestlers that did surfer gimmicks. A generation earlier, including guys literally called Sandy Beach. And Sunny Beach. So when he went to Japan, because of his background of being from Hawaii, they gave him a surfer gimmick, and he worked as Sandy Beach. And he won titles in 0-1 and whatnot. And then from there he just bounced around the Indies for a number of years. I think this is funny. I bet you saw him wrestle in Alaska.
No, I just looked this up. He was not on that show. I just saw that he worked for Wrestle Pro Alaska.
Wrestle Pro Alaska
he
tour.
did. For some reason, he wasn't on the show that I was at, which it pains me because I was about to say, "Oh my God, Joe, I saw him in Alaska," but I just looked and he was not on that show. Because I'm looking here, he worked in Fairbanks and Palmer and a couple other places. But I saw their show in Anchorage, so I did not actually see him in Alaska, because I would have felt bad that I didn't go and talk to him if he was there on that particular show. But no.
Which again, by the way, who was booking WrestlePro at that time?
Kevin Matthews.
So there's the connection. So you can see this guy would get booked by all the guys that that he worked with a decade earlier, whether it was Jack Stain or Kevin Matthews, who were then in positions and of booking indies years later, because he was such a respected worker. So anyway, I just want to say a few words about Micah Taylor.
So there you go. That is I think that's it for us. So we're going to do an overrun here. So going to take a quick break. So if you're on the live feed, just stick with us for a couple minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to review MLW Fightland. Get you ready for what's coming up in the world of MLW, and there is plenty. There's plenty to talk about with Fightland, and there's plenty coming up in the world of MLW as well. Joe, I know you had some. Do you want to do quick thoughts on season premieres for WWE as well, or do you not want to do?
No, I'll blow that off.
Oh, I'll blow that off. All right. I hate to make you watch WWE and not get anything out of it, but that's okay.
We should probably talk about when NXT debuts on CW in a couple weeks, and the SmackDown re-debut on USA. I pitched that as sort of a filler topic, but we had plenty to talk about, and there was really no need to shoehorn it in.
All right, so we'll focus mostly on MLW in the overrun. So again, if you're on the live feed listening right now in the $10 tier, flagshippatreon.com, just stick with us. We'll be back in a minute or so. If you were on the free Flagship podcast feed, you are subscribed on your podcast app of choice, we are going to say goodbye here in a minute. And if you want to listen to the MLW recap review of Fightland, plus what's coming up in the world of MLW, a lot of stuff to talk about there. We are going to be doing that on the Overrun, which is available on the $5 tier over at flagshippatreon.com. So just go on there, subscribe. $5 tier, flagshippatreon.com, and you will get the Overrun as well as a lot of almost all of our other bonus audio as well will be available to you over there at flagshippatreon.com. So that is it for us. That is Joe. I'm Rich. We'll talk to you again next time. Take care.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragon Gate is, how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragon Gate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.